Commission. First item on the agenda is public comment. Any member of the public wishes to address the Historic Landmarks Commission may do so now. Seeing no one, I'll close public comment and move to approval of the minutes of the Historic Landmarks Commission meeting of February 29th, 2012. And we have a motion by Lavoie, second by, we'll get to corrections just as soon as we finish the motion. Correct. Second by Boucher. Any additions, corrections, or changes? Commissioner Arias, and your microphone, please. Make sure it's pinned to your collar.
The item involved is the bridge.
Page number, item number, please.
Item number 4. Item number 2, page 4.
Thank you.
Under the conditions. The maker of the motion agreed that when I made the suggestion that the size of the boulders, which would stabilize some of the embankment, should be clearly spelled out. The reason why, of course, is if they are small and there is a large flow of water down the creek, those boulders will become loose and could damage historic properties further down the creek.
Okay, so we should add
So
comment number 8.
Excuse me, that was issued in, that was addressed in number 7, the stability of the slope?
No, I specifically mentioned the size of boulders.
It wasn't part of the motion, though, that particular
I'm
size.
sorry, I made the comment, and Mr. Lavoie accepted that. And in my comment, I mentioned the size of the boulders.
Okay, how about if we say stability of the slope, including sizes of boulders, continues to be considered as critical to the design?
Yes.
Okay,
All right, I'll accept that.
thank you. Okay, anything else, Commissioner Arias?
No, that's my only concern.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Winnick, please.
Okay, item number 5 on page 6, the 1224 State Street, just 2 comments. Under motion, item 4, retain the bas relief rather than bar relief. So it's just an S instead of an R, so it's a spelling. And then the 6th item, consider lowering the it should say storefront sill by 1 tile height. And that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Schallenberger.
On that same item,
Commissioner Lavoie.
on that same item, same page, item 2, Colonnettes is C-O-L-O-N.
It's colonnettes, not columnettes.
Hello.
Drop them. Okay, Commissioner Schallenberger.
Okay, on that same item, and this, well, no, actually, let's start back on page 4, which would be item 2, the West Mason Street. This may be what was in the motion, but there's, I think, a language problem on these, when we're at this level of review, where we're making definitive statements such as remove the sidewalk on the west side. That's a design decision that we shouldn't be making. That's one method to achieve the desired goal of reducing the width of the bridge, but giving those definitive directions at the concept review levels is not the same as making conditions of approval at, say, final level.
Okay, may I make a suggestion? That we say the commission strongly prefers...
Yes, that's where I was going with this. It's just, I think in the motion it needs to be suggest removing the sidewalk, for example,
Okay.
and then the following shorten the drain line. That, you know, that this type of language I think is more appropriate to this level of review, and then this comment continues throughout the minutes. If you look on page 6 under item 4, where we mention use a square light fixture, suggest using the square light fixture, or the square light fixture option is preferred, that type of thing. And then And item
Craig?
5 has similar. I'm on page 6 now, item 4.
Item number then under
Under the motion,
601
item
consent.
2,
item 2, okay.
use
Hi.
a square light fixture.
it's at
Just
number
say, prefer the square light fixture option, for example. However that needs to be said, but just, this is a concept review. This isn't a condition of approval. So I think we need to just be clear
Well-
that that's one method that the applicant can implement.
But under this project design and final, it was given
Oh, I'm
project
sorry.
design and
That-
final
that-
approval.
You're right. I'm sorry. That doesn't apply to that item.
But, and as, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Lavoie?
And as for the previous one about the bridge, we've seen that several times without changing. And in making the motion, I was very emphatic about what would make us happy, rather than having it come back to us. The suggestion was disregarded 4
suggested.
times.
Right.
I'm tired of suggesting it. That's why that's why I was so emphatic in the motion.
Okay, I understand.
So then on item number 2, page 4, with the exception of adding the sizes of the boulders to comment number 7, we're going to leave it as stands.
That's
Okay.
acceptable to me.
You have that, staff? Okay.
I do have some comments on that. very motion.
Right. At this point, we're leaving just the include boulder sizes, and I'll get to you, Mr. Sharp. Okay.
Let me
Anybody
go-
else?
Well, let me just finish up item
Please.
5 then, because I think the reasoning that I'm using is most applicable to this item since it was a new concept review. Remove the columns and entablature on the north building elevation. The applicant doesn't have to necessarily do that. That's a suggestion. Retaining the bas relief below the windows was also a suggestion because it was discussed that the wrought iron was a method they could implement, but we were suggesting that the bas relief retention was better.
Okay.
Removing the mutton bars from the second-story windows, again, I think Mr. Sharp had that comment and suggestion, and a good one, but again, at the concept level, it's a suggestion. And back to the retaining the bas relief below the windows, I thought I remembered in the motion that it was, they didn't necessarily have to retain the existing bas relief, but just that a bas relief was a good design solution there, and not necessarily the ones that are there now. I don't know that they are the best design. So whatever the applicant comes back with, I didn't want to lock him into that, keeping those.
Okay, so study.
Could say retain a bas relief.
Uh-huh.
Say retain a bas relief.
Right.
You want
Retain-
that?
Study retaining a bas relief below the window.
Okay. Yeah.
Then we'll deal with that when we cross that road, that bridge. No, I think Commissioner Sharp is next. Are you finished, Commissioner Schellenberger?
Thanks.
Commissioner Sharp is next, followed by Commissioner Arias, followed by Commissioner Drury. Really? We should have postponed them.
I'll make this very brief. On page 4, item number 1 in the motion, the commission,
We're never going to get through this afternoon.
the commission continues to request that the width of the bridge from wall to wall, I believe that's supposed to be curb to curb,
How about railing to railing?
or railing to railing, I think that should be clarified, be no wider than 30 feet. This was reiterated by both the prior community activists that spoke, and that we should clarify that.
So add or railing to railing.
Yeah, change
Okay.
wall to wall to say railing to railing.
Oh,
Railing to
change it.
railing.
Okay, thank you.
And both items 3 and 4 are in reference to Kimberly Avenue only, I believe. Remove the sidewalk on the west side of Kimberly Avenue
No, I believe it was on the bridge.
because the bridge only has north and south sidewalks, and that should be clarified.
Okay. So number 3 is remove the sidewalk on the west side of Kimberly Avenue.
We did state that, and minimize the sidewalk on the east
side.
side of Kimberly
Okay.
Avenue.
Okay.
And then item 6, slope the surface of the creek bank adjacent to Kimberly Drive to the least extent possible.
And that should say Kimberly Avenue, not Kimberly
Then
Drive.
Kimberly Avenue, correct.
Huh?
Okay, one way or the
To
other.
the maximum extent possible.
To the
Yeah.
maximum?
Yeah, because we want it to be as much
Okay.
as we want.
Let's try and
That's
get through
correct.
these minutes here.
Okay, that's all I
Anything
have.
else? Thank you, Commissioner Sharp. Commissioner
Next.
Lewis. Don't forget your microphone.
In response to the comments about suggestions versus comments, it could be easily handled by changing the title of the things to comments and suggestions, or suggestions and comments. And that would allow everything to remain, and it's under one heading.
So we could say motion.
No, you just say comments and suggestions,
Okay.
heading it up, instead of, and that would take care of everything.
Yeah. No, I agree. And
It's
Go ahead.
continued indefinitely with the following comments and suggestions, or suggestions and comments, however you want to handle it. But then it covers everything.
yeah. Okay.
And we don't have to change every little
Okay.
suggestion.
Do you understand what she's saying there? That's great. Perfect. Or backslash if you want. I'm going to backhand somebody. Okay, Commissioner Drury. Oh, no.
So if it's at that level of review, if you put consider in front, that takes care of it, or is preferred behind, and that takes care of it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anybody else? All in favor of the minutes as amended? Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Okay. Last time I'm going to give the commission 5 minutes to review the minutes. Next item on the agenda is consent calendar. Ms. Gans.
Mr. Chair, item A, 26 Chapala Street was final approval as submitted.
Thank you.
Item B, 202 State Street was final approval with a condition.
Thank you.
Item C, 819 State Street was continued 2 weeks. Item D, 19 West Carrillo Street was final approval as submitted. Item E, 1111 East Cabrillo Boulevard was final approval with a condition. Item F, 117 West Mason Street was project design approval as noted and continued 2 weeks. And item G, 502 Brinkerhoff Avenue was final approval as submitted. And those were reviewed by Commissioner Sharp with the exception of item G, which was reviewed by Commissioner Schallenberger.
Okay. Consent calendar. Okay. Have a motion by Boucher and a second by Murray. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is announcements.
So, Mr. Chair, we
Gantz.
received a copy of this historic American engineering record from the State Department of Transportation. It's for the Cold Spring Canyon Bridge project, suicide barrier project, and distribution of this booklet was one of the mitigation measures that was connected to the project, and they've sent this for HLC archives. So please contact me if you would like to review it or read it or check it out.
Okay.
And then, per the email I sent you last week regarding the 37th Annual California Preservation Conference, it's going to be in Oakland this year, May 3rd through 6th, and I had asked you all to let me know your interest.
Or be prepared to let you know.
Be prepared. So please
No.
let me know by the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
Nope.
That's all I have.
All right. Subcommittee reports. Oh, any other announcements? Commissioner Drury?
Announcement is without any legal remedies applied, the Cobb House at 1707 Grand Avenue, Miss Gallant, who's the new owner from North Carolina, has cut the trees down. So we can, from my mom's house, we can see the ocean for the first time in 35 years. But it also opens up the profile of the roof, so you can actually see those wonderful pagoda-like roofs finally again after many years. 1707 Grand Avenue, and she's done an extraordinary job both inside and out.
So what was the location of those trees?
Oh, they were on Grand Avenue, and they were blocking the view for everybody above, and they were cut down to below the roof height, so the
And what was that
house-
address again?
1710 is my mother's house. 1707 is the Cobb house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Will staff look into that?
Worth
please?
looking at.
Okay. Commissioner Murray had a comment, and then
Yeah,
Commissioner Rios.
I just wanted to tell the staff that I'm leaving at 4.
Okay. Commissioner Rios?
I have a question of staff. Are the trees on Anapamu, the stone pines, are they landmarks?
Yes.
Are you aware that one of them was cut down last week? On the corner? That's true. In front of the church? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I believe Mr. Downey is aware of it with Parks and Rec.
Yeah, I'll have Mr. Downey come and report on the matter.
Mr. Downey is the urban forester, or forest superintendent.
Are they landmarks?
They are.
Should it not have come? Okay.
It may be okay to come down if they're replacing it with a stone pine. But
I think her question is that if there are landmarks, before they do anything with the trees, they should come to HLC.
oh, I see what it. I
This
see your
is
point.
just always been the
That's
case.
excellent. That was my point. Thank you for making it. I appreciate it. I was shocked that it was being removed.
Yes, Commissioner or Mr. Lamone.
The city, our arborist, the city parks department has broad authority to make decisions with respect to whether there's an impending hazard or whether the tree is damaged to where it needs to be removed. We've asked them to notify us of when they intend to do this work. In some cases, they have the authority to allow the work to proceed and then notify us after.
Including landmark, whatever.
We've asked them to do that. We'll ask him to come and explain what happened.
Okay.
Question, an additional question, Mr. Lamone. Several months ago, we had an application from the school, used to be the Brooks School up on the Riviera. It regarded windows and doors and things like that, and we were told that they were going to be coming back to us. We have never seen them back. What has happened?
They did come back to consent.
They did come back on
Which
consent?
was the directive.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, then moving on to the subcommittee reports. Any subcommittee reports?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Rios?
I am very pleased to announce that the historic element of the city of Santa Barbara has been completed by the subcommittee and that it has gone to staff for comments. They will come back to the subcommittee and then, how long, Fermina? Do you remember?
April.
And April?
April 17th is just another task force review, and then
And then it will come to landmarks and planning commission and council. And I particularly want to commend the staff who worked with the members of the board and their help in getting this done. And also, we had many people who were representatives or interested people from throughout the city and various organizations, and it was definitely a community effort on the part of producing this document, and I hope you look forward to reviewing it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Rios and Commissioner Murray, for dedicating your time and persistence to that, and all the other community members who dedicated their time and persistence. Okay, moving on to item number 1.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
This isn't a subcommittee report. However, with the challenging economy, we are seeing a lot of applications for storefront changes in Paseo Nuevo almost every week, and they all come to consent for the most part, other than the one we looked at the last couple of weeks. And the existing is a mishmash of every kind of storefront known to man. And I'm wondering if we shouldn't have a subcommittee that would look at these and advise rather than putting it on whoever may be doing consent that particular week, or a small one-page guideline or something that would indicate to the applicants that some direction for their proposals.
Mr. Lamone, do you have a response to that at this time?
Right. I think Mr. Sharp is correct. We do have a new management that tends to have more latitude than what typically we used to have in the past when we adopted a program manual for the mall. And so the question becomes more, do we revisit their tenant design manual to see if, in fact, they're following them, or are they just making this HLC be the bad guys and basically turn it down if they come in proposed? So if you're seeing that variety of submittal, you either attack it by revisiting the tenant manual criteria, or place them on full board, and they will get the full dose of the commission's review, and or well, I'm just it's the benefit of a different review, different set of eyes, because you are going to have that variety, and I don't know if it's. We've actually been in situations where we've also advised the architects, and they don't want to hear from us, staff. They want to hear from the commission or the architects on the commission.
Do we, or does the city have a copy of that?
Yes. And so I think it's outdated stuff. So the question is, do we really want to have that discussion with the mall management, or do we approach it with a case-by-case?
You know, if it's a new manager, a new management team, I think it would be a good idea to have that discussion with them, certainly.
We can create a subcommittee to have that discussion, or we can invite them here.
Okay. I would be willing to. What?
Paseo Nuevo.
Pardon?
We had set one up for Paseo Nuevo for the recent signage and
Who was
facade.
on that? Ad
I
hoc?
was.
Yeah.
Ms. Boucher was.
I was going to suggest Sharp and Boucher and Schallenberger.
Sure.
That's probably a little too many. Yeah.
No, 5 is core, so that's fine.
You still want to be on that, Commissioner Boucher? Okay, well then we'll have 4. We'll have
right.
Schallenberger, Winnick, Sharp, Boucher.
We'll contact them.
I think,
Okay.
and I think the purpose should be to look at an update of
Yes.
the manual, because frankly, this brings up another topic. If the applicants are working off a manual that Landmarks Commission approved at some point, they're within their rights to proceed with a design in keeping with that manual. So if they come and we happen to not like it, too bad, essentially. We approved it at some point.
As long as it conforms to that manual.
So maybe an
right?
update
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
appropriate.
Okay. Any other subcommittee reports? Okay. Then I'm moving on to item number 1, which is 217 Helena Avenue. Excuse me. This is a proposal to install 2 level 2 electric vehicle charging stations in an existing city-owned public. It was bumped up from consent. Okay. If you could turn that around and put it right there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Follow along with you, okay? So I'm Alelia Parenta. I'm with the City of Santa Barbara's Facilities Division. I'm the
Welcome.
energy analyst. And we
Oh,
have...
sorry. If you could turn on each of those microphones by pressing that bottom button. Thank you.
That's okay. Alelia Parenta with the City of Santa Barbara Facilities Division. I'm the energy analyst with the city. And we are currently working on deploying some public locationed EV charging stations, electric vehicle charging stations. It's part of the City of Santa Barbara's adopted general plan. And we've been given some free stations, I'm going to use quotations, free stations through a DOE grant.
That's Department of Energy. For
Thank
those people
you.
that don't know.
Department of Energy grant. And originally they had allotted 19 stations to the City of Santa Barbara. And for various reasons, we decided to pare it down to 6 to begin with, because we had 3 good locations with the current electrical service in place required for an electric vehicle charging station. 2 of these locations are indoor garages, so they didn't apply to HLC, and 1 is the brand new Helena Avenue parking lot. So I have on the 3rd page of this packet a view from above. This is Google Earth before it was actually built, so it's a dirt patch. But in the little red square in the middle of the page is where the parking lot currently sits.
This would be State Street. This would be 101. This is the beach side of State Street.
Correct.
This is where the youth hostel is. Thank you.
Yes. And so I just wanted to give you that perspective of where it was. And then I took some shots of close-up where the stations will be. And pardon that I wrote this in red pen. I hope you can see the station location is...
Denied.
It's really the first spot right adjacent to the motorcycle spot because as you can see, On the side of the page, that's where the electrical service is. So we're hoping to have it there. It's kind of where that trash can would be. And here, just a couple of different views. I also took a shot away from the spot so you could see what it was looking at, and that's the youth hostel. And then one more shot from Helena Ave, and pardon the pole, the electric charger is right to the left side of the pole there. To give you some perspective, the first page is what the actual bollard mount poles will look like. No, they don't come in other finishes. That was asked at consent calendar. So that is unfortunately our one option.
Okay. And there's 2 locations?
Possibly 2. We'd like at least 1 there.
Okay.
And possibly 2.
Okay. So, if you're finished, I'm going to go
I
on to
am.
questions. Questions from Commissioner Schallenberger, please. Commissioner Winnett?
None.
Commissioner Rios?
Will there only be one signage? That is the location. You will not be directing vehicles and other parts of the parking lot to that location?
Correct. There
That
will
is
be
the only sign.
one spot reserved for the charging station,
Yeah.
and it will be signed right at the spot.
And that is the only sign for that on the site?
Correct.
Okay.
Commissioner Lavoie, any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair. What is the material exactly?
It's kind of a metal finish.
Stainless steel?
It's thinner than that. Might be aluminum?
But the color is white?
No, it is a metallic finish, so more like stainless steel.
There is a list of specifications on the second page. I don't know.
They're mostly electrical, but I could
Okay, I
present
don't know if it
with
says.
finish. Yeah,
It says
Okay.
enclosure NEMA 3R. That means nothing to me.
those are all mechanical.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Murray, any questions? How about Commissioner Sharp?
I don't have a question, but I wanted to mention that when this came before me at consent, there was another unit that is proposed on the back side, on the Montecito Street side of the old open-air bicycle shop down by the railroad, which is a much wider by about 3 times unit, easily seen from Montecito Street. And I felt that plus the precedent-setting quality of this, of which there will be more submitted around town, really should be looked at by the full board. And then maybe subsequent approvals wouldn't have to be applied for, or it could be done administratively instead of taking our time. And if we can establish some rules on this first and the second one.
Okay. Question, Commissioner Schallenberger?
Yeah. Have you talked with the manufacturer about what the finish options are?
Yes, and so far we've been told these are the only finish options.
You mean option?
Excuse me, option.
Okay.
Yes, option. And there are different configurations of this. There's a wall mount, there's a larger gas pump style, and they all have the same finish. That would probably be a good thing to bring up to them. Yeah, thank you, Jaime. To bring up to them about, jurisdictions are going to want various options and see if they can come back, turn that around quickly enough. And then just a quick note, we are no longer pursuing the Montecito Street charge station because we lost time.
I have a question before we get to. Were you finished, Commissioner Schallenberger? Question before we get to Commissioner Boucher. Have you explored using this option on a pole mount, and that way you could take care of the sign and the charging station
That's
at
a
the same time?
possibility. We could do that.
Okay. Commissioner Boucher, any questions? Commissioner Drury, any questions?
Yes. Could you give me the dimensions, approximate dimensions?
They're about 5 feet tall by just under 12 inches wide.
And about a foot deep, probably?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll go with
Thank you.
comments. Comments from Commissioner Schallenberger.
Well, just since we're at the precedent-setting level here, I would like to see some finish options explored, similar to what we did with the trash cans, the wrought iron, perhaps even that same finish tone of green that we see, maybe a powder coat, for example. I think that would help it blend in a little better and be more consistent with the guidelines. I don't think we want to go down the route of any too much ornamentation, such as well, I'll use the trash can example. Those wrought iron trash cans are incredibly expensive to the city, and whatever route we go here, I do want to see finish options not lock the city into some major expenditures.
Commissioner Winnick?
I'm in favor of the observation. I forgot, we just asked that. Right. I like the observation of the, and I could support the, thank you for putting your finger on it, that wall-mounted or post-mounted. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I could support that because I like the idea that there'd be consistency between wall mount and post mount, and I also like the idea that there's less visual clutter and it would be on that same post and less obtrusive.
Let me just make a comment while you're on that. There's
Sure.
a lot less visual clutter because when you're eliminating this whole base here, and you're eliminating anything
concrete pad.
that's hitting the ground.
Yeah.
Because that pedestal mount has to be mounted on something that's concrete like that, and that's, to me, takes away the landscape and adds to visual clutter. So.
I agree. I support your comments. Thank
Okay.
you.
Sorry. Commissioner Rios, any comments? That wasn't very nice of me. I'm sorry.
I accept it. No worries.
Commissioner
Okay.
Rios, you have the floor.
Well, I agree with the pole mount. If they can't come up with alternatives, then I would far prefer the pole mount. And I think, given the number of communities that are investing in this sort of thing, alternative types of mounting should be rapidly looked into by the firm. However, until then, I would far prefer the pole mountings.
Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Lavoie, any comments? Differing?
Actually, I disagree. I think what's proposed, item option 2, is actually less visually cluttered than a pole with straps and a footing, and then what are we going to do at the top of the pole? And I've seen these things get over-decorated. If number 2 was black and or Malaga green, which is the color of the trash cans, I would find it acceptable.
Okay. Commissioner Murray.
I guess I would like to see the other option when you bring it back. I mean, the other option.
The pole-mounted
Yeah.
option.
Do you have dimensions?
I could get them, sure.
Okay. Commissioner Sharp.
I concur. I think the pole-mounted unit is good. I don't like the stainless steel straps. I think we can be more creative than that. The pole would double as the sign pole, so we're eliminating a pole. I don't think mounting this to a wood pole is good, but that can easily be arranged. And the pole can be Malaga green. And it could also be mounted a few inches less than 5 feet, which reduces the clutter.
Okay. Commissioner Boucher, anything different?
No, I would agree with Mr. Lavoie and Mr. Sharp.
They had two differing.
I'm sorry.
Commissioner Sharp or Commissioner Lavoie? Whose side of the fence are you on?
Sorry, I shouldn't do that.
Who are you sitting with?
Well, I think what we want is the least objectionable thing we can come up with.
Okay, which would be?
I know that's subjective, but
Mr. Lavoie was in support of the picture on the right.
The bollard, what I'm calling the bollard mounted.
Okay.
Most of the commissioners so far have been in favor of the pole. Okay.
Thank you.
typical straps and the pole that we painted it.
Okay. Commissioner Drury.
No, I would agree with Commissioner Lavoie. I think that the bollard, is that the one, number 2?
I think it is the least visually
Okay.
obnoxious, and it reminds me of old service station pumps, the
Okay.
old style. And I'm sure that the question of the finish can be dealt with, we hope.
Commissioner Winnick?
If you don't mind, I'd like to ask a question from the applicant.
Oh, I do mind.
After
Never mind.
how many times? If we had, for instance, the image on the right where it's the old-fashioned gas pump, let's say, would we still be required to have a sign on a separate pole?
I'm not sure about required. I think I would have to look into that. We would probably want a sign so people would know what it was if they weren't familiar.
Okay, and the reason why I asked that question is I wanted Well, I was trying to establish whether or not we would end up with then two things, because I strongly
see, yeah.
we should have just one thing in that parking lot rather than two.
Behind it,
Right on it.
true to
Which is a possibility that we could fashion it onto the station.
Okay.
Not sure.
All right, but anyway, we will have a sign and a pump or electrical connection.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to summarize the comments then. Applicant shall explore different options for the finish so that it's more consistent with the EPV guidelines. Study using the pole mount option with a finish that is consistent with the EPV guidelines. There were at least, I hate to do this, but there were at least 2 commissioners that preferred the bollard mount with modifications. 3? Oh, okay. There were at least 3 commissioners. I mean, it's almost a straw vote, so I guess that's the way we have to do it. I hate to quantify things like that, though.
One of the other comments was it's preferable to have the sign incorporated into
Right.
the system. So you don't have to have two things.
Okay. And the last comment would be that the sign shall be incorporated within either the pole mount or the bollard mount as one unit. Does that make sense? Okay. There you have it. Do I have a maker of a motion?
I just have one more question.
Sure.
Now, one of these is going on the back of the building facing the street, right?
Correct.
Yes.
And the other two are going,
Or no?
Well, no, there's just
the one.
Just one, really.
the others is
The others, different parts of
Garage.
town. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So, would somebody like to make a motion? And please either say 2-week or indefinite. Anyone?
I'll make a motion for, would you prefer an indefinite continuation?
2 weeks is fine. Yeah.
2 weeks continuation with the comments as stated by our chair.
Okay. Anyone willing to second?
I'll second.
Okay. Commissioner Sharp seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
You can keep it.
We are.
There aren't any installed yet, unfortunately.
Why don't you just give that to...
Do you not want to keep these?
No, we just captured what we need.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you in 2 weeks. You understand the motion, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is item number 2, 530 Chapala Street. This is a proposal for a change of use to offices. Replace doors and windows, construct a new trash enclosure, and construct a new parking lot with associated landscaping. This application addresses violations called out in an enforcement case. I won't read the whole number. The building is on the city's list of potential historic resources and is included on the State Historic Resources Inventory. Dalpozo Tire Company Corporation building constructed 1930. And for the benefit of you all, real quick, I'm just going to flash some of these photos up here. I'll take care of it, yeah. I just wanted to familiarize ourselves with where the building is. Okay, everybody familiar?
This is the car dealership that had the former, not dealership, but the former used car lot?
They're gone.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not sure exactly where they are, but they're gone. Okay, if you could please introduce yourselves for the record. Are those plans the same, or are those
No,
different?
this is a little supplemental thing.
Okay.
My
Just
name-
put that under there, then, if you want.
Oh. Actually, I probably want to put them on top.
On top, you want to start with that?
My name's Hugh Twibell. I'm the architect for the project, and this is Stephen Dalpozo.
Welcome. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's a family trust that owns the property now, and Steve is sort of the spokesman for the trust. The original building was built designed in 1929 by Roland Salter, which I think probably everybody on this committee is familiar with. I was kind of surprised when I looked up and found out how many buildings he did in town. I wasn't that familiar with them, but I knew it was a nice building. It was originally built as a service station, and over time it was transformed into a tire store, and then most recently into a used car facility. And the two enforcement items, one of them is to address changes that have been made to the building since 1929. There's never been a permit pulled for any changes on the building since then. And the other one was the planning department wanted us to come up with a design for the parking lot because there was never any design for the parking lot. It was just asphalt. So I think what I'll do is I'll go through and address, first of all, the changes that I was able to find since 1929. And I'll just start over here on Coda Street. The area that's in red on the drawing, yeah, 3. I'm sorry, sheet 3. The area that's in red in the drawing
Use our handy pointer, please.
is concrete. It's poured in place concrete. The original shell is all concrete with a wooden truss roof. The tile that you see across the front and on the building is just a facade. The main part of the roof is flat roof in the back. The blue areas are walls that are framed with 2x4s and drywall. Starting over on the Coda Street side, this little area that says plaster ceiling now was originally a battery rebuilding area, and it was separated with a wall from the other facilities, and it had a little door here, and that was replaced with a window at some point. These 3 bays, and there's a bay over here, were originally the old expandable accordion gates that they pulled across and locked, so that it was pretty much open to the air. Let me see what else. So over time, these 2 were overhead doors, which look like, if I can find a photograph, look like this one in aluminum. So there were 3 of those and 1 here. These were replaced with the glass doors that you see today. They're overhead doors. This bay was infilled with plaster and wood framing, and a doorway was added and a window. This doorway is still the overhead door that was originally added, I guess, back probably in the 50s or the 60s. Yeah. Nothing has been done to the area around the little bathrooms. Going down this way, I think this door is a replacement door, although it's similar to the original doors. This used to be, going towards the Chapala Street side, was a solid window, and this area was cut out, and a doorway, an overhead door was added, I think probably by Montecito Motors. And then on the diagonal corner here, this was originally double doors, French doors, but it was at some point replaced with glass.
Like that.
Right.
That's what we have now.
In looking at this, it's hard to tell when this was done. It almost looks like it might have been done as a part of the original building, that maybe they eliminated the doors, because looking at the sill, the sill and the frame and everything else, it looks like a match, but I can't really tell. The parking lot, there used to be a canopy out in here in the parking area. In 1954, I think it was, there was a demolition permit for the removal of that. There used to be a pole sign on the corner, and that has been removed, although the base is still there. And on the tower, there used to be a pole that came out of the middle with, I think, a flying A sign, and the tower used to have neon on it. So those are the basic changes that have occurred since 1929.
Let me ask one question.
Certainly.
And this may be of staff. When this converted from Del Pozo to Montecito Motors, did it come through HLC? It did not.
No, I don't know.
You don't
I don't
know?
know if it did or not. Yeah.
Does anybody that might have been on HLC back then, Ms. Boucher? No? Recall? They've been there about 10 years. 8 to 10 years.
Less, yeah, they were like 6 or 7 years.
Oh, okay. No, can't remember. Okay.
But there are 2 enforcement cases, so some of this work was not done with permits.
Okay. Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay. There's several lights. There's 3 lights here that were, I think, put up by Montecito Motors. They're sort of a Spanish style.
Where are the photos of where we would see that?
The lights?
We were standing in the parking lot.
Here.
Yeah, that would be one.
Across the street. Aren't there?
This is the one of facing Ortega,
Oh, there's the light.
Yeah, and I've got enlargements. I've got
Yeah.
enlargements. of the
And-
lines. This one.
This one is the best one we have at this time. So here you go. Okay,
And then
go ahead,
there's
Mr. Twible.
wrought iron light that hangs under the tower. I think the tower light might be original. I don't think that these three are. They're a little more elaborate looking. This one is more plain.
Does somebody have the light photo? Thank you.
So I
So
think
this-
this is done by Montecito Motors. Although it's a nicely made light, I just think it's a lot more elaborate. This looks like it might have been one of the original ones. Yeah.
You think that's an original?
Yeah, yeah. Don't tell anybody to steal it. So that's basically the existing facility. There are cables and poles out here, and of course we have the curb cuts and everything.
So
which
why
we
don't you show
would-
us what you propose to do?
Okay, what we're proposing to do, we're proposing to do the parking lot. And I designed this using the city parking standards and ran through it with Steve Foley at the city. We're proposing to put the sidewalks back in except for the curb cut over here to access the parking lot, replace this here. Most of the other changes are in the interior except for this alcove. We're proposing to add a trash enclosure here. We have to add bicycle parking. I was going to suggest that maybe we put a post here for bicycles. And then because the building department wants us to connect these two areas, I put a passageway on the interior, and I was going to take out this door, this overhead door, and put a pair of double doors, and then double doors here so they can still get into their storage area. So this overhead door would be replaced with a pair of doors here. Other than that, the applicant or the client really wants to keep everything else pretty much the way it
What
is.
about this door on the corner? Are you
Oh, I'm
changing
sorry.
that to
Yeah.
from plate glass to door?
Well, as double doors, it was too narrow for handicap, and so I want to put in a single door that meets handicap requirements. Although this comes under Title 8, or Section 8 of Title 24 as a historic building, we're exempted or relieved of some of the responsibilities for handicap requirements. The doors can be a little bit narrower, but
Are you relieved of the truncated dome requirement?
that I don't think we are. So what we're so from the outside, the elevations pretty much show what's here except for this doorway on the corner and this little alcove area where we have the trash enclosure and the pair of doors into that. What we're proposing to do on the bathrooms is just fix the doors in place, probably put something on the back side of the windows, and the bathrooms will be accessible from the inside instead of from the outside. So that way we won't affect the appearance. Yeah. There are some flashings on the face of the building. There's one over this large window on the Chapala Street side, as well as this Chapala Street elevation. And then there's one over this little, this window here on the parking lot and this side of the Coda Street. And those were originally for awnings. They're pretty heavy-duty flashings, and so I didn't show them, but they have awnings here and here. And I don't.
Let me just show you
If we'd
that.
like
yeah.
to, maybe we could add them back in here and the other location.
These are the flashings you're talking
Right.
about?
Yeah.
In there.
Right. And then there's a couple on. There's one here and there's one here.
All right, you all finished?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I
So
will
what
open
we're looking for today are just
comments.
and
Okay.
directions
Great.
from the staff.
I'll
I mean,
open
from
public
the
comment. Mr.
commission.
DeForest.
Yep. Let's take down. Oop, there you go, Cal. Okay. There you go.
Good afternoon, Kellum DeForest. I just want to point out,
Oh, you broke it.
I just want to point out that this is an important part of the Chapala streetscape. It's been there, as he says, since 1930, and it needs tender loving care because it invokes a era when that part of Chapala Street sort of was Automobile Row, and it just gives a feel. I would like to, and I know I'm not supposed to ask questions, what use, other, because I gather no longer an automotive use, do you envision for the site?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Seeing no other public, I will close public comment and move to questions from the Commission. Commissioner Drury, any questions?
Utilitarian, I suppose. Do you plan on putting awnings?
Well, there are awnings in a couple locations.
There's a couple awnings now. I don't know if you want them out over, the sidewalks.
Put the microphone in front of your mouth.
I just wondered if you had any plans to use those alcoves. They're pretty nice as is, empty, but I wondered if you...
Not really, unless, you require it. I'd like to leave it the way it is, really.
Thank you. Okay, question, Commissioner Boucher? Commissioner Sharp?
I see there's some security lighting on the back side of the tower, and I see surface-mounted conduit on this part. Are you going to clean that up as part of this?
Yeah, I think the conduit you're seeing here is water lines, and I think the water comes in here, the service, and I think it runs up the building and comes over here to a hose grid or something, so we can take that off.
Put the microphone in front of your, Mr. Twyble.
There is a big square security light here. There's a pair of floodlights on this corner, and there's another one of those square security lights, I think, over in here, and I'd like to get rid of those to clean it up.
And I see that you are taking up the asphalt and providing planting areas against the building here. Is that correct?
No, the only planting area against the building is here. We're providing walkways against the building here and against the building here for access for handicap, for access for everybody.
So in the parking lot, there will not be additional landscaping proposed?
Around the
other than the perimeter
and here. So this is handicap access and then overhangs, and then this is walkway here.
Okay. Thank you.
And any questions, Commissioner Murray?
Yeah, I guess I'll ask what Helen asked. Would you envision it for the use of the building, or just?
Well, right now it's office use.
So just
I don't know. It's hard to say. Someday it may go back to a car lot or something, but right now I envision office use mainly.
Okay. Commissioner Lavoie, any questions?
I'm curious as to why, if it's an office, why you're retaining the roll-up windows when you're or roll-up doors when you're sort of removing any type of access to them?
The people that are in there now actually like that. They said that they roll up the doors on a nice day and they're all in cubicles and they just like the fresh air. So unless it's an appearance thing, they just assume keep them.
Yeah, they look real nice. And they're functional. So.
Commissioner Rios, any questions?
I may have missed your comments. But how are you going to retain water on the site? Water retention?
We haven't gotten into that with the city yet.
Okay.
Stormwater
I'm assuming,
management.
assuming we're going to have to, I think they said we have to do phase 2 or tier 2. So we'll address that.
So I note that this is on the list of potential historic resources. Are you prepared to pursue this further and have it established as a historic resource within the city?
I don't think the client wants to do that.
Okay. Commissioner Winnick, questions?
I have one question. It's about the trash enclosure.
Yes.
Have you studied other locations to place it, like such as maybe recessing it where Oh, I guess that's where the kitchen was. Yeah, I'm not sure where, but if you've looked at other places to locate that.
I did, and it seemed like the least exposed place, and it was out of the way, and it seemed to fit in. We only need to have one 95-gallon container for the square footage that we have, and this would actually accommodate 2 plus a little overflow in case they had a large box or something. I just didn't want to have it exposed.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Schallenberger, questions?
Why don't we just roll into comments to go back around? I could phrase it in a question, but...
If you're ready to make comments, you don't have any questions, we can start with you with comments.
Okay.
Chair, I just have one question.
Okay, Mr. Commissioner.
I noticed you're taking out the driveway coming off Chapala. That's...
Public Works is making us replace all the sidewalks.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Let me just ask one question, I'm sorry. With the trash enclosure, have you studied ways, not different location, but ways to make it look like more of the architecture, either by continuing the rake of that building down, or bumping that up so it's more of a parapet instead of just the minimum height there?
Yeah.
You've looked at other ways, or this is your first?
Yeah.
Okay, your first step.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to show the location, and I was going to go around and look at some of other Roland Sauter's other buildings, try to pick up some sort of a feeling or element.
Okay. Commissioner Schallenberger, then comments.
Okay, just on communicating the drawings, I have to say, without the benefit of a presentation and comparing, flipping back from this existing plan to the new plan, and then comparing the photos to the elevations, I wasn't really clear what the scope of work is. So when you come back, just if you can do things like existing door to be removed and replaced with just some
labels,
notations
labels.
and
this is sort of the thing I was hoping that I would get from you. I mean, if the door is acceptable, we'll keep it there.
We're not in a discussion period right now. We're going to make our comments, and then if you have something to add, we'll allow that.
Actually, I want to back up for a sec. First of all, I want to commend you on the sensitivity, I think, to the historic building. I can see that you are aware of its significance and that you are taking care to try to protect the resource here. So it's commendable. I think the project in general is supportable. I mean, the site plan is a well thought out site plan, and I think some of the impacts to the facade are negligible and or acceptable, and so I have generally positive comments to the proposed project. I'm just saying in review, just to be able to clearly see what I'm looking at here. I mean, I see that you're proposing a trash enclosure, and you're proposing a pair of doors here, and then you're replacing a door in this alcove area. It looks like the alcove area is essentially the most affected of the facade. I'm not particularly concerned with what you're doing in the interior as far as the new men's and women's bathroom and removing the kitchen, or that's all well and good. But just from a scope of work standpoint, I just wanted to see. I'd like to see that in the future. Just a little, just some notations and some call-outs and things that highlight what is proposed versus what is existing, and that carries over to the elevations. We've got 3 elevations here that say proposed, but compared to what? In other words, what's the existing elevation? And even if that were just a photo of the existing above, so I can compare existing versus proposed, I mean, I couldn't, from these drawings, tell that this door is existing to remain. I would have to know that by either going to the building or looking at photos. I don't know that this isn't just a completely new proposed elevation. So just some clarification things, really. There's no beef with the project at all. It's just, if you can clarify those things. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Schallenberger. Commissioner Winnick, any comments?
So my comment, I'll just focus back in. And overall, I appreciate the sensitivity of the project. I echo my colleagues' comments. The one thing that I'm concerned about is the trash enclosure, and I would like to see some study of an alternative to it. I find that in plan it does clutter that location. That's one of the nice things about the building is that it does step in that location. So anyway, I would just encourage that. And I guess I would like to say, just since one of the commissioners asked a different question, which is our chair, I'm not so sure I would want to see it incorporated with the eave lines of the building. I think I would support something that differentiates it and minimizes it. If it could somehow be housed within the footprint of the building, that I would support the most. Thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Arias, comments?
A couple of comments. I would ask that the applicant consider establishing it as a historic resource in the city. There are now advantages from the Mills Act, from the legislature, which makes it more economically and feasible to have a historic status for a building. And I also would like to say that it's very nice that you have been a steward of keeping this building very special, because it is indeed a special building.
Thank you.
The landscaping is going to be very important and to soften the appearance of the building, but at the same time, I would urge that it not be too high, because you want to have security and ability of the police to look at the building from the street as they drive by, and also to consider being very careful about making it as tag-proof as possible from graffiti.
That's a good area for it, too.
Yes, I know. I spent the morning taking it off in other places. So I'm also very interested in water retention on the site, and I think the project is very fine. I think it's approvable. I would just like you to consider those points that I bring up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lavoie?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would agree with most of the comments already said, especially the appreciation for the continued improvement of the property. It's a very sweet little building. Thank you for keeping it. And my question about the roll-up doors was more curiosity than it's actually more in keeping with the history of the building to keep the roll-up doors. So that's fine with me.
Thank you.
Yeah, don't take that as a criticism. As you go around the building, everything you've proposed is I'm comfortable with. I would like to see the trash enclosure design more incorporated with the building as opposed to this foreign object that somewhat got shoehorned in somewhere. I don't object to the location, but it just needs to look at it and make it fit with the architecture like it has always been there. Same with going through things like light fixtures. It could be more of consistency in the light fixtures, and keep it simple. It's a very sweet little building. Thank you.
Commissioner Murray?
Yeah, I definitely echo those comments, and I particularly want because when you talk about the doors and windows you're going to change, it will be very important to me to see, okay, this was an existing door and we are changing it, and here's how we're changing it. So I would be looking for those. I'm also very glad that you are retaining the door, the roll-up door. And I was also glad to hear that you are going to look at other Salter's building to see an inspiration for the truss enclosure, because if it's not well thought out, it will not be good for the building, even though it's a small addition. So I would certainly be very careful with that.
Okay. I don't often jump in the middle of comments, but I appreciate my fellow commissioners' sensitivity to the roll-up doors and keeping that use the same. However, I'm very concerned about your interpretation of that comment, because these roll-up doors are a modern interpretation of roll-up doors, basically. And to me, in this photograph, and it's unfortunate that you don't have a closer-up photograph, but they look like they're aluminum. The breakups of them are extremely modern in the proportions. So I would be looking for anything and everything to make those doors appear a bit different, whether they're finished differently, whether you, I don't know that necessarily adding a mullion or a mutton would do, but they shouldn't stand out like they do in this photograph here. If the camera could zoom in, I don't know. But they should actually sort of recede and look almost like an open bay or a bay. They should be in shadow more than anything else. Right now they're looking like they're on the same plane as the rest of the building.
Are they original?
No, they're not original. They're
No, those doors aren't original.
right.
But
Yeah,
Oh.
but I appreciate my fellow commissioners' comments about keeping that use as sort of the same, you know, and having roll-up doors. I don't have a problem with the roll-up doors. I have a problem with the way the roll-up doors look presently. Okay, we'll get to you, Commissioner Sharp.
Thank you. I really appreciate you taking care of this building. It's always been a very special favorite of mine. I would try and encourage you to add some vine pockets to that walkway to try and soften the building with vines, maybe even to the extent that the Michelson brothers did across the street. For the trellis that they added, it certainly took the curse off of a bunch of open garage doors and was a very inexpensive way to create upgrading of the building. And I would like to see you add a finial to the tower to try and punctuate that properly. And that's it.
Add what?
No, Commissioner, sorry. A finial. It's like a spire kind of thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
On top.
on top, right here. I'll even draw a little bit in there for you.
It's already there. We don't need it.
Commissioner Boucher, any differing comments? And don't forget to turn on your microphone.
I too have always appreciated this building, and I think the one thing, you're converting it to office use, are you? Okay. I don't know what kind of signing you're going to need, but it's something to think about fairly early in the game.
Yeah, it's a private company that's in there now, and they, as far as I know, they don't put signs up. but
Okay, well, just
If they do, yeah.
a suggestion, if it comes, this good old sign committee.
Okay. Commissioner Drury, any comments differing?
Yes, I don't know. I can't keep up. I don't know if there was no finial in the first place on that tower, and I don't know that there was.
There was a sign with a flying A on top of it, and there was and
Pegasus.
and the ribs on the towers
Put
had
Pegasus back up
neon.
there.
Neon.
I don't know what color.
Cool.
And
Maybe we can't do a flying A,
asked-
but that would be wonderful.
Well, I asked if we could
Yeah,
return it to
maybe
that
a
condition.
finial
They said
would be
no.
less
Building department
intrusive than
said
a flying A horse and neon.
Anything else, Commissioner Drury?
Just a moment. I'm gathering my
I
thoughts.
know, I'm
Thank you.
helping you.
Thank you. Yes, I appreciate your help. I'm not sure. I just like going against Commissioner Sharp, but I don't know about ornamenting the west-facing facade with vines. I like the architecture as is. It's a very clean and simple look. And I appreciate this building more than I can say. I spent a lot of time in the office when my dad would get tires on the car when I was a kid, and I got to know Mr. Del Pozo, and he was in the Army with my dad and all this stuff, you know. So I like the simplicity of it. I'm really glad you guys are keeping it up. Appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Commissioner Schallenberger.
I wasn't going to mention the doors because it looked like it was just something that was going to proceed as existing to remain. But for another view, I guess, I actually am okay with the quote-unquote modern doors just as a method of differentiating historic resource from the new condition. It is an accepted method for historic preservation. And, to try to get it to original is to put these accordion iron things. So if you're not going to go back to that original accordion design, which we're not, then something that differentiates I'm okay with. And not to mention, I do want to acknowledge that those are large doors. To do anything with them is a significant cost. I understand that. So, but that's really beside the point. It's really more I'm okay with them being in their current design.
It appears that I'm in the minority, but that's not the issue. I guess I would like to know what the commission feels about changing at least the color of them. I'm assuming they're aluminum, Mr.
They're
Twyble?
brushed aluminum.
Brushed aluminum. Changing the color of them somehow to recede more into the bay of that opening. Is that, pardon me?
I don't know how you do that when it's not a factory finish.
Maybe that can't be done. Okay, then.
No, I agree with you.
Commissioner Winnick.
Thank you. If I could ask a question, I think, and maybe a comment with it. Historically, because looking at the photographs, maybe what would give it more a sense of uniformity would be to have an awning over that door. And currently, I don't see an awning in that picture. So my first question to the applicant was there ever an awning over that door?
No, the awnings were on the little wing on the Coda Street side, the side that faces the parking lot and the side facing Coda. And then there was one on the Chapala Street side facing Chapala, as well as the long facade facing the parking lot.
Okay, so I could infer.
So basically 4 awnings.
Right, so that means the awnings, in fact, did not make it look uniform along that entire facade previously. Okay. I was looking for a unifying factor. I think I didn't find it. Thank you.
Did anybody else have any other comments? Okay. Mr. Twyble, would you like me to summarize the comments and then you have a response, or would you like your response now?
Oh, go ahead and summarize.
That's what I assume. Okay. The commission appreciates the owner's care of this building. The commission strongly encourages the owner to pursue landmark status, which has certain benefits to you. Add descriptive callouts to the drawings, such as existing and proposed. Study the location and especially the configuration of the trash enclosure. Am I going too fast, Ms.? Okay. Study the location and especially the configuration of the trash enclosure. The landscape should be sensitive to security of the site. Consider graffiti surfaces, minimizing them wherever possible. Consider stormwater management for the site. Study adding some vine pockets. There should be more consistency in the light fixtures. Study adding a finial to the top of the tower. Study changing the roll-up doors to a darker color. Mr. Twyble.
One of the things about the roll-up doors that came up with the building department is we haven't done an energy study on the building yet, and we don't know if the roll-up doors are going to meet the energy requirements. So that may be a factor. If we don't end up keeping the roll-up doors, if the building department requires it, replace them with windows, what would the pleasure of the board be? Would they want to mimic the windows?
You propose we review.
Okay.
Okay. But you're on the right track, I think, with that. Okay. So there was one comment that I forgot to add, and that would be related to the truncated domes. Explore eliminating the truncated domes, or if using truncated domes, use a dark color.
I looked at REI. Is that acceptable? The red? You don't want red?
I would have, in all
I don't want to use yellow.
No.
Mr. Chair?
But that red's kind of
The alternative is to use curbs.
I'm sorry, Ms. Gantz.
The truncated domes would be located where?
The truncated domes are located at the head of the parking spaces here.
Along
here.
Oh.
Okay. So this project must comply with Chapala Street design guidelines, and as such, the sidewalk on the Chapala Street frontage will have to be the Davis Omaha tan. So I just wanted to throw that in there. So when you're thinking about those domes,
maybe the truncated domes are a tan color, and you would certainly get the contrast between the asphalt and tan that you need. Okay, Commissioner Winnick, I believe, had something, and then Commissioner Schallenberger.
It was yours about the domes, if it is.
Well, yes, it was.
Well, go ahead.
Just to say, I would prefer to see a curb approach versus the domes. And in fact, if I'm reading the site plan correctly, I think you could do a curb at the southern edge of the walkway and then a planter bay between the head of the parking and...
Actually, I think he's talking maybe about a curb here.
And a curb instead of those wheel stops, just two curbs continuous forming a planter there.
Yeah.
You know, which is common.
Yeah, right. So this whole thing just becomes a planter.
I think if this was a curb, we really don't need a curb here. I don't think we need
No, you
to do
wouldn't have a curb.
Yeah, you just have one there.
You planter and then the beginning.
Right,
That
okay.
gives you more landscaping.
Yep,
and
it does.
eliminates the
Actually, I encourage that as well. So,
So do you want to add that to the comment?
yeah, I would like to add that to the comment. So, study eliminating the need for truncated domes by incorporating curbs and planters as applicable. How's that? Okay,
And
Commissioner Winnick.
I wanted to give a little direction to the applicant in response to the discourse regarding the roll-up doors. So I just would like to say that I would support if the building department turned down the roll-up doors that were existing and something new had to be proposed, I would be able to support insulated glass roll-up doors, for instance. In other words, ones that have the thermal properties required to meet the Title 24. So I just wanted to add that.
That's a good point, yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so I think we've summarized the comments well enough for you, Ms. Feliciano. I am looking then for our Commissioner to make a motion with the time frame, please.
I'll make a motion. Do you want 2 weeks or?
What do you think?
What's that?
You want to come back in 2 weeks?
Whatever you want.
No, it's however fast you
Whenever.
Well, we keep getting threatening letters from the departments, so I think we probably,
Yeah, let's move this along.
As long as
Okay, we have a motion, but I'm sorry, Mr. Twyble, we're capturing that. If that was part of the presentation, we need to capture that.
that's my only copy. I bought it from the.
No, he's talking about the original
I bought
drawings.
this from the archives.
Ms. Scantz,
What is the question?
do you need the copy of the original drawings?
I bought these from the archives.
It was presented, so.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. So we had a motion by Boucher. Second by Drury. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Do you understand the motion? Very good. We're on a 10-minute recess.
Thank you.
March 14th. Next item on the agenda is item number 3, which is 33 West Victoria Street. This was last reviewed October 12th, 2011, and there was quite a bit of public comment, or two public comment, Mr. DeForest and John Rowbottom, and then the motion. The motion was project design approval and continued indefinitely to the City Council with the following comments and findings. Study the restrictions of allowable parking times at the drop-off area when the theater is not in use. Continue restudying the removal of the power pole at the corner. Resolve the longitudinal slope of the sidewalk with the placement of the benches. Resolve the location of the traffic signal on the corner of Chapala and Victoria Street. The majority of the commission supports relocating it. Study the possibility of an addition of a mid-block pedestrian crossing at the entry to the parking lot. Historic resource findings were made as follows. The project will not cause a substantial adverse change in the significance of an historical resource. Okay, if you introduce yourselves for the record and give us a brief presentation, please.
Jason Curry with PMSM Architects.
And Derek Weston on the board of Ensemble Theater Company.
Thanks, everyone. I'll give you a brief description of the plans we've brought in today, and I'll describe a few of the changes that have been made since we last presented these plans to you. I'll address the comments that we had at the last meeting, and then also go into some of the details that we've dealt since then.
Just call out the
So I'm starting on page A0101. It's the site plan, the overall site plan.
And here's a pointer for you to use. If you don't, well, you can use your pencil. Okay, go ahead.
So since the last time that we were in front of this board,
Oh, I'm sorry.
there you are. Yeah.
Okay, let everybody get to their page first. We have some slow people down at the end of the table. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
All right. Okay.
Oh, no. Okay.
Okay. So the changes that I wanted to highlight have come from further review from Public Works since the last time that we met. I'll start out with the largest one, and that is the entrance to the parking lot, which is currently off of Victoria Street. Downtown parking as well as transportation have come up with an idea for this area, and it's significant enough that in talking with planning, we thought that it should be considered a separate project. So what we were hoping to do was to study this whole area as a separate project, separate from the theater portion. And what they would like to do here is to turn what's currently an entrance into an exit.
Okay, if it's a separate project, then don't comment on it, or don't present it, please.
Great. So within the area that's still what we're considering the theater project, the other change that Public Works had us look at was in the intersection at Victoria and Chapala, specifically the pedestrian curb ramp here. In the set that you guys looked at last, we had a dual directional curb ramp, and they made the comment to we've changed the radius slightly and also moved it in this direction a couple inches, which aren't really perceptible, but we changed it to a single direction curb ramp. So those are the changes that came out of the review of Public Works. Then to address the comments from the last hearing, we'll start down in this area. This is indicating the power pole. We've been meeting with Edison, and previously, or the existing condition is it would have fallen right in the sidewalk here, and we've been able to come up with a scheme where we move it into the planter. We're going to be feeding the building off of it now, and that offsets some of the cost of moving it into the planter. So it will be there, but I think it'll be nicely out of the way of the pedestrian path to travel in the planter. The previous set of plan also had this traffic signal in its existing location, which was also going to be in the sidewalk, so this plan is showing that moved off to the side. It was something that Public Works asked for, and I think that this board also was looking to see. One other comment that came from this board was studying a crosswalk, and that was in this area, and I think that Public Works staff initially said that they didn't think that we should study that any further, that it wasn't really applicable, but maybe that's something, again, that they relook at when they're redoing this area. Another area of the plans that we have got more detail on that had some questions were the park bench alcove, this area here. And I'll turn to a larger plan, a couple sheets. I'm now looking at A0113.
Okay, let everybody get to that sheet, please. Yeah. Go ahead.
This is the area of the plan, and to reorient us, this is Victoria Street, Chapala Street's running this way. And the concern is that we've got a sloped sidewalk. It's not very steep. It's 4%. That's about half the slope of a accessible ramp. But the concern was we want a level park bench, and how is that going to interact with the sloped sidewalk? So what we're doing is there's a landing where the park benches are that's at a very imperceptible slope, 2%, running in the same direction. So then the difference between the two is only 2%. We're taking the center point of the elevation here, lining it up there, and then a slight slope up there and a slight slope down there to bridge the transition in this kind of soldier course pattern of the brick paving compared to the herringbone. So at those ends, there's about an inch difference, and it's still less than an 8%, which would be an accessible ramp. I think that addressed all of the comments from the previous hearing, so I'll just go into some of the more detail of the areas of concern that we've been looking at so far. And I'll start with the landing. The landing configuration is the same as we looked at last time, but if we move to the enlarged plan, which is on A0111, just show a little bit more of the detail that's been involved.
Let everybody get there. To the next sheet.
So again, to reorient us, this is Victoria Street here. So the drop-off is all the same configuration, and the landing's the same configuration. We're showing now a detail for the pavement. We've got the city standard concrete pavement and the sidewalk, and then a similar score mark, except that we're adding an accent that picks up some of the articulation of the building and also of the shape of the landing. Proposing two different types of concrete pavement here, a smooth gray at the borders and an exposed aggregate at the field. And share some color material boards here. This is a little image of kind of the concept of what.
Okay, so this is the type of exposed aggregate you're going for?
It's hard to tell from that photo, but we're going for a subtle exposed aggregate.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'll come back to this one later on. Just going to share that point. I'll move into the sites, the sections here, and we can see the construction details, but we're showing brick for the raised planters. Why don't we go to the section through here, kind of a typical one on A0122.
Hold on, let's. Okay, you ready? Go ahead.
So I'm looking at this detail here, detail 4, which is the one that went right through the main set of stairs, and it shows a little bit of everything. You can see the design for the railing, and we've got a little reveal edge to the edge of the landing, and then here's a brick planter in elevation. And this shows the design for the stair tread. We're doing it in concrete with a recessed light in the riser. And let's go to that detail, because it's on A0125. So it's a simple concrete nosing with a recessed step light in the center of the stair, a groove for the visually contrasting stripe with a stained concrete. Let's continue on and look at the railings in a little bit more detail. This sheet has all of the project railings on it, but the ones that are at the entry landing are these two here.
Which would be 1A and 1B.
Details 1A and 1B. And this is showing since the landing isn't over 30 inches, we don't have to do the guardrail that has code-required pickets on 4 inches on center. So this is a nice open railing in metal. It's going to have just a little detail at the top, a pointed arch taken off some of the character of the building. And then the other, just a little, also same sort of detail is in the handrail brackets, a little pointed arch on the bottom of it. I think that covers the main points on the entry landing. Maybe we'll just move into the building and the fly tower, the exterior details of the fly tower. So I'm going to move ahead to A1 531.
531.
531. Okay. So I'll just stay on these sheets for a second, and we'll go into the actual details. But this is showing the wall sections through the fly tower. and showing that we're doing the real brick veneer at the base and then a plaster above. And I'll just kind of continue on here. Let's go to A1701. These are starting to get into the actual details. So this is looking at the basic design material-wise for these elevations is kind of mimicking the front end of the building where we've got a base that's done in a painted brick and then a stucco above. So here's a transition, picking up some of the wood molding details that are also common on the front of the building in a simplified way, with brick veneer below and plaster above. And then I'll move on to the next sheet, which looks a little bit more at the loading dock door. So I'm on A1702 now. So we're trying to take our cues from the existing tower on the design of this loading dock door, the existing stained glass window. We're kind of taking the same pointed arch shape and instead of doing the stained glass window, taking the detail from the cladding of the existing doors, which is like a tongue and groove. So we're showing as much undulation in the buttresses as we can in these details. We've got about 18 inches from where the outside of the building is to the property line. So we're coming as close as we can to that and getting a lot of nice articulation so that it doesn't read flat, so that it has some depth like the existing tower does. The loading dock doors themselves will be pretty heavy acoustical doors, and so to get this tongue and groove design on the exterior, we'll do it in factory applied metal moldings that they'll furnish out in the same dimensions as this kind of wood infill above. And since it'll all be painted out, we're not showing any natural wood finish. I think that they'll mesh together nicely. Maybe I'll take a step back here and we'll look at the large-scale elevation of this. I'm going to go to A311. A1311.
So we're on A311?
311.
A1311.
Here's a large-scale elevation of the tower. It's picking up the same detailing in the buttresses as the existing tower, where we've got a large one and then a secondary one, a wood molding and a brick edge, and then this would all be wood applied. It's in the kind of the same design as the doors. Taking the same profile for the diagonal parts of the buttresses, and we've also got a man-sized door and a window that are picking up similar brick details that are at the rest of the building, with a soldier course header and sloped brick sill. The details at the parapet are, first of all, we've zeroed it out. This dashed line is representing the actual roof beyond. So we're really pushing up the inside as much as we can without having anything be up higher than that. So really the parapet is down to zero where we can get it. And it's picking up the same stepped shape as parapet in the rest of the building. Let's go the rest of the elevations, building elevations. This is from the east.
We need to do a better job of getting it on camera here. Okay. A302. Hold off. Okay, go ahead.
And we've got the same details here that we were looking at the south elevation, the brick below, the stucco above. Here's the same man door detail. And maybe at this point I'll bring it over the exterior color finish boards, and we can look at color and material. So we're proposing the same painted brick veneer at the base, and then a slight difference in the stucco above. The existing building has a very heavy textured stucco, and I'm proposing just a slightly more medium sand finish, just to give it a little bit of distinction between the new and the existing. In the color scheme, we're really picking up the existing accent colors. I looked at an idea, same way of maybe doing a subtle difference and setting it off the new between the existing. But I think that this is an appropriate way to do it, to just match the rest of the building accents. So we have a darker blue at the doors and windows, the trim, and then a lighter blue accent that gets picked up at the corners.
Just before you go on, and that's the color of all your wrought iron? Railings, everything?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And then moving on to the front. Maybe I can also, in a second, have Bob Cunningham join us. I've put some of the palette of the colors of planting that we're using, because I think that's also really going to liven up the front entryway, all of the different plantings that we have planned. One thing, and maybe let's go back to the site plan just for a second.
Actually, why don't you show your park bench first, and then we'll go back to the site plan. So that's the park bench you're
Here's
proposing.
the park bench. Proposing same flat black wrought iron and a redwood.
What's the length of that?
So we have 2 4-foot long benches. So I'm going to turn back to the overall site plan. That was A0101.
A0101. One more. There we go. Okay, go ahead.
So I wanted to come back and talk about the landscaping a bit on the site plan level, because we did make a couple changes to landscaping here as well. Before, we hadn't considered replanting in this area. We're going to be bringing in a water line for the fire sprinklers, so we're going to replant this area. As well, we had previously proposed a climbing vine on a fence in the east alleyway, and we've since, after meeting with the neighbors, decided that that was something that we could take out to reduce maintenance and to make that area a little bit cleaner. Bob, would you like to just maybe talk a little bit about the planting plan? I'll turn back to you, Chief. Sorry.
About the fence or
all
the landscape?
Mr. DeForest, you could stay right there.
Why don't you give us an overview of the landscape?
And Jason, if you would switch places with Mr. Cunningham.
Actually, I can stand.
Can you?
Feels better to stand.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're on LP1.
And you have a pointer there you can
Okay. Chopstick or pen?
high-tech pointer.
I think you've seen most of this before, but we essentially we've got 4 new palm trees in the Parkway strip. Those will be 14-foot tall, clear trunk, and then 2 12-foot clear trunk in the planters between the sidewalk and the platform. These are replacing the existing queen palm.
I'm sorry, Bob, if you could move that microphone in front of you and speak a little
But
bit
it's all
louder.
taped down.
Yeah. There you go. It hurts.
I'm so sorry. Believe me. We've changed the species of the hedge. We had initially Texas privet, and we've decided that the Rhaphiolepis hawthorn Indian hawthorn would be a better look. It takes shearing better, so it doesn't look as brutalized after it's been sheared. It's nearly as tough as the ligustrum. We think it'll be a better looking plant. So that's along in each of the Parkway strips. In addition to the ground covers that we've got in there, at the staircase, a couple of fairly unique agaves. It's called candelabra agave. Taller plants in here. Accents are dracaenas, the large dracaenas. Around the corner, a couple of weeping bottle brush trees to get some height against the building. On the back side, to replace the London plane trees, we've selected firewheel trees. The London planes on this several blocks of Chapala Street and in the parking lots have kind of come to the end of their lifespans, we believe, because of the lack of groundwater in the area. So we think these will be a better fit. Also, they're evergreen trees, so that we'll have foliage up against the building for all seasons. The new landscaping in this planter will better match the new landscaping that's been done in the parking lot adjacent, which was completed about 2 years ago. It's more drought tolerant, also more sustainable in terms of the effort involved and the green waste involved in maintenance. The fence along here is detailed.
That's the one.
You don't have that. Okay. Thank you, Susan. It's a double-sided wood board fence. Just a redwood with the top rail and the bottom rail. So there's no back side. It's a nice clean surface on both sides.
I'm sorry, where did you say that goes on plan?
Along this edge
Okay.
here.
Extend us from there to there.
And then we've got 6 rectangular concrete pots along this walkway with shade-tolerant plants in them. That's essentially it for the landscaping. I can go into further detail on the specific species, but you've seen that, I believe, before.
Okay.
Palms are going in at the largest size we can accommodate within the Parkway strip. They're not as tall as the existing in some cases, but what we're going to have ultimately will be a consistent height along the front, which I think is going to be much nicer than the existing.
Okay, does that wrap it up?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
I will open public comment. I have 2 speaker slips. First one is Mr. Callum DeForest, if you could grab the microphone there. That will be followed by John Rowbottom.
Callum DeForest. I'm still unhappy with the narrowing of the Chapala Street and the radical change to the historic streetscape that used to be in front of the First Baptist Church. But it seems to somehow be necessary. I'm also, though I know it is not now in the purview, or it hasn't come yet before this commission, and I don't know whether traffic circulation is a, and I don't think it's a purview of the HLC, but even though it's in the EPV, that it is going to be, if the exit is changed to if the entrance is changed to an exit, it is going to be difficult.
That's not part of this project.
I realize that. I just wanted to point out that it's going to make the people, the people that are dropped off waiting to wait for their drivers to come back, because they're going to have to go some distance to find a place to park, like the Granada, to get back to the center, if they, now that they no longer can get in at that entrance. But I do want to say that this is much improved from what we started out at. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Mr. Robot. Hello. Right there.
Okay. We have a beautiful design here. I recently realized that the property line is about 3 feet further towards our direction as neighbors on the east side than we previously realized. That's going to have a little bit of a several effects on our current situation. The eaves of our building, everything is beautifully drawn on this, but our building is not shown very little. It's barely an outline. And I just like to ask for an interface kind of review of the property line, of how they relate to each other in that alleyway. It's going to narrow the doorway down on our Victoria access point to less than 3 feet, like a 33-inch gap between the wall and the corner of our building is left for our main entry to the patio, which will be for vendors and customers for the restaurant. That I would like to have looked at. The rear end of the property, I'm also a little concerned about, because there's a trash enclosure that we're both sharing, that we've granted an easement. So both buildings share the common trash enclosure per an easement agreement. It's on our property mainly, a little bit on the Unity property. And I feel that the iron handrail is a little bit incomplete as far as it makes our private patio very easy to access. Makes it much less private. Be able to step over the rail onto the top of the trash enclosure and then just hop down into the patio. And there has been a big problem with vagrants over the years in that area. So that's all I wanted to mention, were those couple of points. And our building does predate the church by at least 10 or 20 years. I'm not sure exactly, but I think that's it.
Mr. Chair? Yes, just for clarity's sake, Mr. Robottom, your building is just to the east between the church and the access to the Victoria Street parking lot.
Yeah.
Housing a restaurant, and then I think head west in the
That's
back.
right.
Thank
yeah.
you.
And I think there's about a 10-foot space between our building, if I'm not wrong, but the property line moves to where it's shown on the survey. It leaves us under 3 feet. We thought we had like 6 feet there, but kind of it moves it over and makes everything a bit pinched. So that's all I wanted to bring up. So.
Thank you, Mr. Rowbottom, and I need to close public comment. Do you know other public?
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
I
Go
have
ahead.
a question.
Mr. Rios has a question for you.
May I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
You talked about the iron railing being incomplete and the accessibility to your patio. Do you have any other suggestions as to how this might be corrected to make your patio work, your restaurant patio work, and also the other?
The only thing I could come up with would be put a gate on each end of the ramp alleyway, which would be self-closing, and I suppose whatever code is on that kind of a thing. But there's going to be people going through there, I suspect, on the theater side.
Okay.
We do routinely have to, clean out our hedges of, vagrant possessions and things. And they go in that dumpster because it's, the Unity House, and they throw a lot of stuff in there. So, or enclose that, but that wouldn't really enclose the roof of that structure, but that would not really solve them gaining access to our patio.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, then I'll close public comment. And the way I'd like to do this, I guess, is first ask questions regarding landscape. I don't imagine anybody other than me has questions, but Mr. Cunningham, if you could please. You may stand or sit. That's your option.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do you have a cut sheet of what the Quick Creek Classic planters look like?
I don't believe we have. It would be on the next page.
If we do.
If we did.
Okay, I don't see any cut sheet there.
Okay, we can provide that on consent if you like.
Okay. The last question I have at this time for you is, have you studied or come up with any other trees than the Stenocarpus as replacements for those London plane trees? Any trees that maybe are closer in size and height?
I believe the Stenocarpus will get to the height that the London planes have reached. It'll take a while, but I think we felt it was a better suited tree because of the height of the building. It's a tall building, and we wanted a narrow, upright tree to fit within that space. We can certainly look at it again and come back with suggestions if you'd like.
My experience with the Stenocarpus is that, yes, it can be a spectacular tree, and sometimes it can't be. Sometimes it really doesn't perform like we all hope it would. But
we'll give them a lot of encouragement.
My experience being temperamental that tree being temperamental. Okay, so that was a comment. Any other questions of Mr. Cunningham? Okay. Then let's go to questions regarding the site plan, and everybody go back to the site plan, please. I do want to disclose that I met with Transportation, Mr. Rob Dayton. If you could find the sheet for me of the site plan. Earlier this afternoon, just before the meeting, he had one concern that he wanted me to bring up at the meeting, and that had to do mainly with the configuration of the sidewalk and the planter that's along Victoria Street. His preference would be to have the planter and the sidewalk follow the line of the back of the curb, or the curb, so that we have a diagonal curb and then a diagonal planter. I told him that I didn't think that would be the preference of the Landmarks Commission. I spoke for all of you, just because I thought that that really reinforced that diagonal curb line, and we were kind of shying away from that diagonal curb line. So my suggestion to him, and I don't want to really design it for you, his concern is the sort of the perceived distance between these two corners. As you're walking down the walkway here, your perceived distance is really only about 3 feet. So I suggested to him that maybe we move this line here just a little bit down, maybe not make it so abrupt. And so, excuse me for drawing on your drawings, but that way that sort of opens up this perceived site. So I just wanted to throw that out for all of you to chew on, and then we'll go with questions. Questions, Commissioner Drury.
Yes. Would there be, I guess it's a question then for us, if you throw the burden on us about that paralleling the curb, I would vote for that. We'd lose planting.
Yes, we would.
But, and that's, now I'm going into comments.
Okay.
So, my questions. The proposed street parking on Victoria, have you talked to the people? There's going to be the project across the street, 34 West Victoria. So is the street parking as proposed on your side of the street? Have you talked to the traffic engineers about what's going on across the street?
I haven't been talking to them.
Okay. Okay.
If I can comment, it's my understanding that there are no changes on the opposite side.
Thank you. Perfect. And will the street light be moved also?
The traffic signal?
Traffic signal will be moved. And what you mentioned when we were talking about this particular intersection, you said something about a one-way crossing or a one. Well,
the
curb ramp.
The curb ramp, as opposed to having two separate curb ramps, it's
oh,
one
it's just
diagonal.
It's just one. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Those are my questions.
Okay. Commissioner Boucher, any questions? Commissioner Sharp, any questions?
One question. That fly has an immense amount of plaster, and we often get burned with having not shown on the drawing any expansion screeds or any other type of divisions to keep it from cracking. Is anything like that proposed?
Think carefully before you answer that. I'm sorry.
So I was hoping that the. Well, maybe we should go to
Yeah,
the
go to
elevation.
the elevation. I think would help.
Put a scale down and you can see the distances that we're talking about. So we turn to A1301.
A1301. He's talking about, obviously, this plaster expanse and other places.
Yeah. So, and this drawing is at 1/8 scale. We're a little over, we're over the 20 feet. We're at 34 and 36. I'd like to try to go with no expansion joints.
Good answer. Go ahead, Mr.
Okay. Sounds good to us.
Anything else?
No.
Okay.
I have no details in the plans for expansion joints. I don't intend to.
Okay. Commissioner Murray, any questions? Commissioner Lavoie.
On the side or
Expansion joints on this side or just
No. On the building or just the site? I thought you were just asking site.
Yeah, I think Mr. Sharp means the whole building.
Okay.
Area of questions.
No, area of questions. Thank you.
Oh.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Okay, I do.
Yeah, building or site.
Could you refresh my memory about the date of the building again?
So there's the two portions of the building were built at separate dates, 1921 and 1910, I believe.
Okay.
You can double check on the historic report.
That's close enough. Do you know the color of the building when it was originally built, or the last construction of it?
We did talk to the consulting historians, and they couldn't find what the original color was.
Okay.
They thought that they weren't sure if what's there now was existing or not.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioner Lavoie?
That was all.
Commissioner Orias, any questions? Yeah.
Would you expand a little bit on the reasoning why the staff did not like the crosswalk?
I didn't get a detailed explanation from them.
The
mid-block crossing.
It was not exactly mid-block, it was up a little bit further. My concern,
Okay, that was your question.
That was my question.
Any other questions?
No, that's it.
Okay, Commissioner Winnick, any questions?
I'm abstaining.
Okay, Commissioner, Commissioner Schopper. Commissioner Schallenberger, please.
Is there a transformer required, a new transformer?
We're going to move that power pole, and when we move it, we're also going to serve the building off it, so there'll be a pole mounted.
Pole mounted, okay. How about a backflow preventer for fire sprinkler?
It was shown on the
Sure.
entrance
Sorry.
to the parking lot off of,
Okay.
but yes, there is one on the entrance to the parking lot off of Chapala.
What is the necessity of the acoustic rating on the loading dock door?
We're trying to get as much as we can. Right now, that door, I believe, is a 51, STC 51.
But I'm not sure, why do you need it to be sound rated?
Oh, because it's a direct shot right onto the stage, which also means a direct shot right into
That's
the auditorium.
That's it. Where are the rest of the sections that are noted and called out? There's 4 or 5 pages of additional building sections that are called out on the drawings that I'm not seeing here.
Yeah, I didn't include those in this set. They're in the, we have those.
Okay. Do they show anything that should be aware of as far as protrusions and that type of thing?
There's nothing in those that's not showing up.
Nothing sticks up above the parapet, for example?
No, there are at the stage smoke vents, but those are low enough that they won't be within sight line.
And on that note, what is the line that is above your when you're calling out the top of the parapet on A1-311? The line that looks to be some inches above, calling top of parapet. I'm seeing a dashed line indicating the top of the parapet, but what is the solid line above that line?
I think that dash line is the roof.
But it says top of parapet.
Does it? Oh,
Top of parapet
it
here?
certainly does. Well,
Oh, that's there's 2 tops to the parapet. One is here and one is there.
the solid line is the top of parapet.
Right.
And the dash
line is below that.
Is
the roof beyond.
The roof beyond. Okay. Okay. So that's just a. Are there any structural, mechanical, electrical drawings that would need to be included? I'm wondering. I see your roof plan has most of the equipment, but structurally, used to seeing some structural drawings at final approval level.
We have a full set of structural drawings.
That's all been coordinated with what we're seeing here. Okay. Are there any exterior fixtures other than these wall-mounted sconces that you've mentioned, planter fixtures, for example, or?
Yes. So the electrical site plans are in this set.
Yeah, I see some call-outs, but there's no fixture schedule. I don't see
any of those. So the are on E101.
Right.
And in the riser of the stairs, we've got a recessed fixture. I've got cut sheets of those ones. As well as we have, so that's to light the stairs. We also have fixtures that'll go in the planters to light the adjacent ramps. And here's a shot of the fixture that's going in the stair. That's fixture 2. And then a small one that goes in the planters that's eliminating the other new fixtures that we're proposing are the decorative wall-mounted sconces.
Okay, Commissioner Rios, question?
Yeah, I have, would you care to expand on the concern about your neighbor regarding the fence and things like this? Possibly finding a solution. I know you want to be good neighbors and things like this, and it sounds like there is a concern.
So let's turn to the large-scale site plan in that area. A0112. And I'll also flip between, we have an elevation in that area. So to understand what's going on, we'll also flip between A0132. So just to get everything oriented here, Victoria Street's here. This is the alleyway at the east side of the Victoria building. What we're proposing is a ramp, and that is part of our exiting of the stage. We have a ramp going to Victoria Street and a set of stairs going to the parking lot. Here is the footprint of the neighboring building, and here is the property line. This is the trash enclosure. So it kind of straddles the property line, and there's an easement in place for shared use of the trash enclosure. The site slopes downwards in this way. The stage level is about 40 inches higher than the ground level out here. So we've got a ramp coming up, a landing, and a stair coming down. I'll just show you that in elevation. So Victoria Street's out here, and the parking lot is here. We have a ramp that comes up to a landing, and a set of stairs that goes down to the parking lot. The trash enclosure wall is just screened in here, just for reference. That's where it is. And the line of the fence that we're proposing is this dashed line there. So I'll turn back to... So what we're proposing is a ramp with a wood fence, and we wanted to give a similar sort of screen to what we've got between these, privacy buffer between the alleyway and the patio, compared to what's there now. What's there now is partly a wood fence and a little wire fence with a hedge growing on it. In meeting with the neighbor, we decided that the hedge was kind of a maintenance problem as well as just a cleanliness problem. So we've taken that down to a wood fence. We've located the fence an inch this way of the property line. So between the corner of the building and the face of the fence, we think is about 2 foot 9 inches. So we're basically proposing to put this in, but we haven't proposed anything for closing the gap there. To describe this area a little bit more, we're also just basically proposing the base minimum here, which is the stair that we need to get up to the landing. It's got a railing on it, and there's a guardrail here. Between this spot and there, the elevation change is pretty significant. So this is where the courtyard would be 6 feet, and then a 4-foot guardrail on top of it. So if you can imagine a wood fence, and then this section would be concrete with a metal railing on top, would be the view from the neighboring property side.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner
I
Reeves?
was under the impression there were also some pots.
Yes. So to keep the landscaping kind of clean along this side, originally we did have a planter up against the building. Instead, we've simplified that to some precast concrete box planters. And that's what we're seeing here. And
I've asked for a cut sheet on those. So.
I'm sorry.
And I've asked for a cut sheet on those.
Okay,
so
thank you.
can see what those look like. Or I will be asking.
It's fairly
Right.
faint in the elevation
Yeah.
there, but you can see the...
Right? Yes. Are you finished, Commissioner
Yes,
Reeves?
thank you.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Schellenberger. Commissioner Yu.
I meant to ask one question about the ramp design on that. It looks like, I think 30 feet is the max as far as your run. and that looks like that's what determined where that mid-landing is. And I don't know, did you study at all maybe locating that landing at a different location, say something that relates to the buttress, or just something that makes that? It doesn't look like it relates to that landing. Doesn't really relate to anything at this point.
I'm pretty constricted on the lengths and the clear spaces at either end. So the ramp itself the landing isn't relating to the building. Instead, I tried to get the posts for the handrails relating to the building. And I think that those will be a little bit more of a visual key a little bit more perceptible.
Okay. I had one last question. The step lights. You could go back to that section or that drawing that showed those. And do those step lights occur only off of Victoria Street? Or do they occur in that exit that's near the trash enclosure as well?
They occur there as well. They occur at every stair.
Is there any way that you can put those step lights so that they're on the cheek walls, the side walls, as opposed to the riser, so that when you're looking at the steps, we're not seeing light shining at your eyes?
They are louvered. The stair that you're referring to, I do have enough wall that I could get something onto the wall. I didn't use that detail for the front because there isn't enough wall on either side to get them onto.
All right, thank you. Okay, yes, question?
I have one last question. Sorry. Could you describe the railing material?
Sure. Go back to...
I just want
It's
to
wrought
know
iron.
if it's square tube,
Solid.
solid. Thank you. That's all I wanted. Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to comments then. Commissioner Schellenberg, any comments? Any good ones?
Here's a list. It's okay.
Positive ones. I mean, I commend the applicant. You can just see there's been a ton of work here and a major sensitivity to the historic resource, so that's appreciated. I would just weigh in on the plaster texture. I would actually prefer to see it match existing. It seems that you've gone through great effort here to match other details, and since there isn't really such a differentiation, I would think you'd want to just continue, either differentiate or match is kind of the thought behind that. But otherwise, I am completely in support of the project as proposed. Thanks.
Commissioner Arias.
I thought a lot about the crosswalk, and I don't think it's a wise idea to have it in that location. I think you're going to find people who are going to cross, but I think it might give them a false security. And as such, I don't think it's probably a good idea. I originally thought it was, but in thinking about it, it's not. I'm a little concerned about the treatment along with the neighbor next door and that. And I'd like to see some more sensitivity. I'm not sure what. I don't have a solution, but something. When I see a project like this that has had so much time, love, work, sweat, and blood, I have to ask you to put it on the list for on the State Historic Resource Inventory and on the City Historic Resource. Make it a landmark. You don't want to go through this again in another 10 years. So to preserve it for the future and to give the legacy to the community that you have worked so hard to achieve, I ask that you register it in all means to preserve it. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Lavoie.
I echo the comments about the great amount of work and the sensitivity of the detail that's been done on these drawings. I only have, one big issue, one very small issue. I don't think the step lights in the riser are appropriate or consistent with how we typically approve step lights. Actually, we typically don't approve step lights. And the other is the color, the blue. To me, it's a very 1970s color, and I would probably guess that Bill Williamson suggested that color. He did a lot of painting on State Street in that period. It's not definitely a 1920s color at all, and it's not a color that I associate with the Tudor Revival or the Gothic Revival. The color back then was more often Oxford brown for the wood elements, and a brown on the doors. So I'd like more research done as to what that color might have been originally, and a suggestion for a different color other than the blue. And it would be more appropriate if you're going to paint the architectural elements of the building, that they have architectural colors, grays and stones and browns, rather than blues. The other minor thing is in the paneling above the stage door, that you consider turning it as either a herringbone, a diagonal, changing directions in each panel rather than the vertical panel, which seems to fight the what that is up there. Typically, it would have been a little bit more decorated. Otherwise, commend you for the great amount of work and how far we've come on this project. Thank you.
I echo those comments.
I didn't call your name yet.
Sorry.
I'm finishing writing up Mr. Lavoie's comments. Sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. He's very verbose. All right, Commissioner Murray.
He took my comments away, but I definitely
Okay, Commissioner Sharp.
will not. The light, the risers are just. I just wouldn't be able to support those, and the color is really important. So maybe the historians can do, just dig up some of the paint scraping and find out. But the colors have to be appropriate with the architecture. And if we don't find the color, then certainly what Bill suggested was better than the blue. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Murray. Commissioner Sharp.
Thank you. I also want to congratulate you on a superb job. And even Mr. Weston in raising the amount of money he has to make sure this thing is going forward, and it's quite a feat in today's economy. As I mentioned before, I think you should plan where the expansion screeds are going, because they probably will be there for sure, especially on some of these inside corners where the 45-degree crack usually occurs. You might as well plan ahead and show them in some imaginative way on the drawings. I think that's really important. I do hope you can work something out with the row bottoms and their access problem at the bottom of your ramp. The 2'9" is certainly not enough, and it seems easy to do at this point in time. And I agree with Commissioner Lavoie that the blue is not what I would consider a Baptist color, and you should do paint scrapings and try and ascertain what the original color was.
It's probably Baptist, but maybe not Tudor.
I don't think so.
Thank you, Commissioner Sharp. Commissioner Boucher, anything to add?
I would just like to point out that this building is already a structure in there,
Okay.
and we'd love to see it go beyond that.
Okay. Commissioner.
Sorry.
Commissioner Drury, please. Comments?
Yes, I agree with the previous comments. I think the colors need to be studied. I also think that the narrowing of the planter from Chapala to the drop-off spot, I think that sidewalk needs to be as wide as possible. So that you can accommodate we hope, the crush of theater goers.
Otherwise, I think the project's really lovely, and I appreciate the hard work.
Commissioner Murray, and then Commissioner Schallenberger.
I'll check the historic structure report, but I think when they did the report, they recommended that it'll be elevated to a landmark. So we'll check on that, and if that was the case, then we really should, entice the owners to move forward with that.
Commissioner Schallenberger.
Have we discussed colors at previous reviews?
No. We have not. They had not been presented. Okay. All right. I'm going to summarize the comments and look for somebody to make a motion. The Commission appreciates the extent and hard work of the applicant's drawings. The applicant and owner shall resolve the neighbor interface, proximity, access issues and concerns. Okay, so the applicant owner shall resolve the neighbor interface with respect to proximity and access issues and concerns. Study using a larger tree than the stenocarpus to replace the London plane trees. Provide a cut sheet for the Quickcrete planters. Quickcrete is capitalized. Reconfigure the layout of the sidewalk near the diagonal curb to widen the perceived distance. The mid-block crosswalk is best left out of the project and is probably not a good idea. The Commission strongly recommends registering this structure and site as a landmark, as a registered landmark. The step lights in the risers are not appropriate. The proposed blue color needs more substantiation and research. The paneling above the stage door may want to be diagonal. And last, plan where the expansion screeds will be placed on large expanses of plaster. Okay, do I have somebody who wants to make a motion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I'd make a motion for design approval at a final level with any additional changes to come back to the consent calendar.
So that was final approval.
Final design approval.
Just final approval.
It was given project design approval, so now you're giving it final approval.
I'm giving it final approval.
Thank you.
And to the comments made by the chair, that to reconsider a color more appropriate to the Gothic revival.
Okay, so
And,
maybe... sorry.
More importantly, that staff initiate the process for elevating this project to city landmark status and schedule a hearing for that effect.
Second.
Okay, so I had a motion by Lavoie and a second by Boucher.
Under discussion, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Drury.
I may be in the minority about that planter, but I do feel that the sidewalk needs to be as wide as possible along that, along Victoria Street planter before the drop-off. Do you want to include that in the motion, Commissioner Lavoie?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Okay. The sidewalk near the drop-off should be as wide as possible. I completely disagree with that. We need more we need more landscaping there than we need sidewalk. Let me tell you, we have a big plot.
Where is that? I think that actually...
I'm not going to vote for this project anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
When Chair Suding drew in red, is that what we're talking about?
I think Commissioner Drury is talking about more of a diagonal,
Just that one little...
enlarging this sidewalk.
I disagree, actually, and won't accept it into the motion. I agree more with what Chair Suding was drawing as a more gentle S-curve.
Which is reconfigure the layout of the sidewalk near the diagonal curb to widen the perceived distance.
As stated by the chair.
Yeah.
I can agree with that.
Okay.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Sharp, under discussion.
I would ask that the motion maker not have it come back before consent for these somewhat major items.
I kind of agree. I think it should go to
especially the color of the building.
full board.
With all of your expertise, I think that needs to be not on one person's back, personally.
Okay.
So
I would agree.
returns
So-
to
so
full board.
Okay, so you're giving it final approval with an indefinite,
Well, so that it can get into the building department?
with indefinite continuance? Jason, indefinite, or
To work out these last things?
why don't you why don't you do indefinite and then call me if it's to full board for details?
Yeah. And details and colors, as the comments mentioned. Okay, so we had a motion by Lavoie, a second by Boucher. We finished our discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion carries. You understand the motion? You're clear on it?
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
I
Commissioner
would like to urge the applicant to come back as soon as possible while these plans are fresh in our mind and all. It's to your advantage instead of having to re-educate us every time. And there are minor details that we need to get done and finished.
That's an advisory comment, but thank you.
Yeah.
I would like to make a comment. I think it's important.
Real quick, I'm going to give you 1 minute. I'm sorry, Mr. Weston.
We don't have the right to paint the rest of the building, so when you consider paint, our right is only to paint the theater side of the building, so there's that issue. Because this is publicly televised, I do want to say that the proposal of making the current entrance and exit is a temporary proposal and would ultimately also become an entrance.
I'm sorry, where are you speaking about?
It's not part of this project, but...
Oh, up here.
Right.
Okay.
That will be converted to an exit only during construction.
An interim solution. Okay.
And then ultimately will be both inlet, at least that's proposed, inlet and exit. And we are giving tours. We'd love to have people come to tours.
Hey,
cool.
you're supposed to comment on our comments, our purview, not advertise tours.
I told him it was okay.
Oh, okay.
I got permission. We really appreciate your effort on this. It's been a long process, and it is much, much better. So thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Mr. Chair?
And you know the reasons I'm not voting for the project. Ms. Gantz.
I just wanted to tell you that the Historic Structures Report did say that it would be eligible for landmark status, so just to clear that up. And, Mr. Chair, would you like to explain why you opposed?
Oh, sure. I oppose public encroachment for the use of a private building.
Thank you.
And I've said that all along. It's been no secret. Oh, I'm sorry. Abstention is Winnick. Do the next one. That's been burnt.
Okay. Yes. Sure, if you don't need it.
Yes, it does.
Jason, you can have this one back if you call on it. Yes, thank you.
Our next item is item number 4, 1224 State Street. Would you introduce yourselves, please?
Sure. I'm Clay Arell, architect for AB Design Studio. With me is Eric Baer from AB Design Studio and the owner, Eric Meyer.
Thank you.
I asked Susan to pull these old photos from last time because we actually got some of the archive plans together, as was discussed at our last review. And I wanted to pull
some of these old photos. May I read the motion from 2 weeks ago?
Surely.
Number one, efforts to improve the building facade are commendable. To show the colonnettes between the windows of the southmost building elevation. We did have a couple comments about this when we were going over the minutes, but I'll read this as is. Remove the columns and entablature on the north building elevation. Retain the bas relief below the windows. And I think that was clarified to mean a bas relief, not necessarily the ones that are there now. Replacement of the upper windows with more traditional windows is supported. Consider lowering the sill by 1 tile height and consider a less contrasting tile color. Number 7, consider retaining the plaster detailing. 8, remove the muntin bars from the front second-story windows. Okay.
Mr. Chair, which item was it that you had other discussion on during approval of the minutes?
Well, we had a spelling.
Oh, on the bar?
On the bar.
Bar
and
versus
number
bar?
2, the colonnettes.
Okay. Columnettes?
And it was just a distinction of the A bas relief, not necessarily D bas relief.
Love it.
There also was a change on the number 6 with the insert of storefront.
Oh, correct.
Yes.
To identify exactly where the tile would be
The
left.
storefront sill.
Correct.
Right.
Got it. Just want to make sure I got all of those. Great. Shall we
Okay.
begin?
Go.
I'll start here. Where did those photos go? Oh, yeah, thanks. So as we had discussed prior at the last hearing, we'd shown these photos of the old Anderson Camera Store when this building was built in the 40s, 47, I believe. 47, 48?
Designed 47, built in like
47.
Okay. This is actually the floor plan. Where's the pointer?
Right here. Sorry.
It's much easier than my finger. This is actually the thank you, the floor plan of what was originally built, and you can see sort of these kind of glass storefront boxes here, the old door. This is the ice cream shop, ice yogurt shop, and then it came back around, and it had a door that came up these existing stairway, and then it had another kind of glass enclosure and these funky angles. Yeah, and you know, we went back and looked at that and figured, well, going back to that really isn't appropriate at this stage, although it is interesting from a historic perspective. And one of the things that we looked at was bringing our previous plans, or the existing building, excuse me, has a door that comes out. So the stairs come down and the door has been relocated to here, which is right where that storefront is for this space, and it services the upstairs. So we were looking at bringing the central door back, and so we've altered our elevations a little bit based on your comments and based on a little bit of our research. So we'll just kind of dive right in, because I think if anybody wants to look at these, and this is the old elevation, which isn't extremely telling, but this was the old roof line, which has since been kind of broken up. The windows have all been changed, as you can see. And we can put the sign back if you like. And here's that central door that was going up to the stair that accessed the stairs, and then here's the lower storefront, which is fairly hard to read in these drawings here. So, and it had sort of these little railings and shutters and other things. So, this was more informative than what we're proposing. So, if anybody wants to have a gander. I'm just gonna skip over to the elevations because I know we're a little bit behind schedule, and
thank you.
Kind of just jump into where we're at. Previously, this is the existing elevation as it sits today, and here's our proposal here. And what we've done is, per some of the comments, we've removed the colonnades out front and pulled back this entablature a bit. And we've relocated this door back in the center, which we actually kind of like. This building's kind of gotten funky over the years with the different roofs and the different pieces. And we really wanted to do a couple things differently, but the door here seemed to make sense. We changed the windows up above. We left the bas relief. We've added in the details here. We still like dividing the windows here just to help them feel a little bit distinct. And then we did lower the tile line a bit on this side. We've also pulled the storefront has pulled up a little bit more, so it's helping with the issue of light. So I think those are all good improvements. And now it's just one flat storefront as opposed to having a return, which I can show you in plan. Thank you. So here's the putting back the old door. Here's this is the ice cream shop, and then we're pulling that line out a little bit more, so we think that'll help out on the storefront. This is where that old door was. The old storefront line is kind of back here. And that was at request of the owner and just kind of studying the elevation a little bit more. And then Commissioner Sharpe made a comment about these windows being different than the ones going down the Paseo, so we looked at that as well. So we've done the elevations of the Paseo. Here's the existing windows, and we've elected to go ahead and change out those 3 that return here, because these windows have awnings, and it's a fairly different condition as you go back. And so the owner, in talking with the owner, we agreed that we do the 3 on the front and the 3 on the side matching, which was, I believe, your comment, Mr. Sharpe, about them kind of looking different within the same space. And as that returns back, these actually become quite different as they sit today with awnings and different treatment. So we agreed that good comment. Let's wrap that around. We've found what we think is a good break point for the window systems. The rest of this is primarily just detailing and whatnot for the project. But I want to say that we've addressed all the comments on your list. I didn't go one by one, but I think we hit them. So without any further ado, I'll let you guys, unless Eric would like to say anything.
My only thing was I really appreciated. I hate those columns. So I think it was you that mentioned we get rid of those columns. And once we got rid of the columns, it was like, oh, dude, let's put the door back where it was, because that was such an obvious.
Yeah, once again, and making it better. So, and these were the colors that we had been looking at for the painted windows and the tile. There's a comment about the tile from Commissioner Winnick, and we're just going with a white paint on the building.
Thank you. Questions, Mr. Drury?
I have none.
Ms. Boucher? Ms. Murray?
No questions.
I just wanted to make sure we covered public comment. There were no public comments.
No.
Okay, good.
Ms. Reyes?
Nothing.
Anybody else have any questions?
I have one. I guess that was a question.
Oh, Barry.
Mr. Winnick?
The question I have is just, and I support the project. I think it looks nice, and I'm also in favor of the break point of where the buttons are on the windows versus where they're not. All that makes sense to me. The only question I have is because of the new entrance door that's for the stair, which is returning to the period before, I'm just curious about the columns at the upper level, now that you've gotten rid of them below, because I'm seeing the weight of that one column above the door, so I'll phrase it as a question. Did you study? Just finally remembered. Did you study the possibility of not having that read as a column over the...
Let me respond to your question. Thank you. We went back and forth on that one, and we did go back and forth and look at it, and I agree with you, and we're happy to remove it. We're just kind of keeping it simple and more addressing the lower end, and when you take it away, then it looks like this is one flat facade.
Yeah, that's
and we, like I said, we went back and forth and looked at it, and it felt like that helps break these two apart. But I could go either way.
The drawing makes those columns upstairs appear far more dramatic than
they're only
real life. They're just you don't notice them like they're just a little sneaky outy.
But I appreciate the question.
Mr. Schallenberger. All right. Comments? Mr. Drury.
I have a question.
I'm sorry, Ms. Boucher.
Gosh darn it. In the go-round, did you decide to keep the second-story columns?
We did.
For the little
Yes.
detail?
It was mostly just to break up the second floor facade, yes.
Okay, that's my question. And I think it's a lovely project. I'm glad to see this building simplified a little bit. Thank you.
Ms. Boucher. Ms. Murray? Mr. Lavoie?
Comments.
Comments, yes.
I can support the project, and I think the column up on the second floor is fine.
Mr. Lavoie.
My notepad.
Yeah, really. I
Mine
think
too.
you've made some good decisions. I think there's some that need some more thought. I don't have a problem with the door in the middle under a column, but something more than just a door needs to support visually that column and have a reason for being in the middle of two buildings. Because it still reads as two buildings, and I think that's not a bad idea. That's a good idea. Something needs to frame the storefront on the left and keep it separate from the storefront on the right. So bringing that entablature all the way across is fighting your design rather than helping it. Taking off the two columns is a great idea, and taking off that entablature is a great idea. And how you frame those storefronts needs to be kept still pretty simple and clean. And how you address that door and make it heavy enough to really be there needs a little bit more design. Support what the suggestion to change the windows until the roof changes on the side. I think that's a good idea. And the other things you've addressed, I'm happy you kept the bas relief. I liked it, and I think it's a nice design. So, a little more work, please, on the door.
Thank you. Ms. Urias?
Well, I'm very satisfied with the building. I think you've done an excellent job. I would also like to compliment you on the tile. I think the tile selection that you picked out is lovely and will enhance it. I am not quite sure how I feel about the concerns that Mr. Lavoie has with the door, but I have a lot of respect for his comments, and if he feels there needs to be more substantial work, a little more work on it, and I would agree with him.
Mr. Winnick?
I support the project, or find, and also appreciate the comments before were addressed relative to tile and the window fenestration. And looking at the photograph that the owner, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, Eric, presented, it's less of a concern for me regarding the column because I see it really as just a pilaster, very low relief pilaster. Thank you.
Mr. Schallenberger?
Yeah, I also am in support of the project, and I would differ on the tile selection, though. The mosaic, I'm not sure that with the bas relief and plaster molding casings up above, that a mosaic and a Spanish set, I'm used to seeing that in a more simplified, just a straight flat plaster facade. So I would be more in support of just a solid base of color there, but it's really your choice. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not sure a mosaic is not in conflict with the plaster elements up above.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Drury?
I want to ask Commissioner Lavoie, are you talking about the middle door on State Street?
Yes.
The one that leads up? You want to make that a little more important?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that the very strong horizontal
of the fascia sort of. Yeah,
Right.
you point to that makes it look all very modern, Yeah. And like it's one building and it's really not, it's two.
I would support that.
Here, here.
Okay, I personally certainly believe that that column as shown is not going to be seen at all, so it's the fact that a doorway is supporting a column, which isn't normally what we like to see. It's not a real column, so it's just a little break up there. And all the comments are favorable except regarding this door and beefing it up, making it a little more, adding a little more work to it, and making it come off better. So is there a motion for a 2-week continuance?
Consent?
Mr. Chair, could it go to the concept review, do you think?
Yes, it can go to consent.
Okay, I would make a motion that with the comments that the chair made, that the project on 2012-24 State go to the consent calendar.
Did you grant it any type of approval?
And then they would have final approval.
So are you giving it project design approval today?
We got to give
Yes.
it PDA first, and then
They have to get something else.
2 weeks, correct.
Is that workable, the 2 weeks for you?
oh yeah,
Okay.
I wish it was 1 week.
Well,
But
You
yes,
do it tomorrow.
I'm confused. So we can't give it final?
They said they have to get a,
we're giving it project design.
Design.
I think you give it. The motion is to give it project
Project
design
design
approval,
approval.
continue to consent.
That's it.
Okay, fine.
and then.
Project
you'll get
design
final.
approval, 2 weeks to consent. For final.
And somebody needs to second that.
Is there a second?
Mr. Chair, under discussion?
Second by Mr. Winnick.
Mr. Chair?
Mr.
Under
LeBoy.
discussion to the motion?
Yes.
If we give it project design approval, then you're approving it, what's presented to us in the meeting without change. And I can't support that motion because I don't know what the applicant's going to come back with.
Well, that's why the comments need to be strong.
Yeah, if I was saying, do this there, or we were saying, do this there, I'd be very comfortable with it, but we're not. We're saying solve the problem, and the problem hasn't been solved yet.
Would the maker of the motion like to just revise the motion to continue 2 weeks to consent?
I would agree with that.
Okay.
And the seconder?
The seconder? Mr. Winnick, do you agree with that?
I do.
All right.
So 2 weeks to consent, and we'll put it on the consent agenda as for project design
And final approval.
Thank you.
All in favor of the motion say aye. Opposed?
Oh, sorry.
Motion carried. Suiting abstains.
It's not a technicality.
We already had that.
You were opposed to the revised motion?
Yeah.
Okay. The continued 2
I'd
weeks.
rather solve
I got it.
You're like, we're good.
That's there.
Now we're only 15 minutes behind.
Okay, next item on the agenda is item number 5, 801 Paseo Nuevo. And this is a revised, let's see, the project description has been revised. Proposed enhancement to Paseo Nuevo, Phase 1 of the project, includes a concept review of benches, tables, chairs, pottery umbrellas, new ribbon flag pole element, and modifications to existing lighting plan. Phase 2 of the project is the redesign of the center court and north court. This phase includes benches and new fountain feature in center court, demolition of 2 arches and circular colonnade, new paving, and site wall in north court. Final approval of the Phase 2 improvements is requested. Phase 1 received final approval on August 31st, 2011. Hi. Good, Henry. How are you?
Hello, thank you.
Okay, if you would have a seat and introduce yourselves for the record, and then give us a brief presentation, please.
Henry Lenny, Design Studio.
Welcome.
And I'm Ryan Mills with DMA.
Welcome. Oh,
Maestro.
oh, stealing our pointer. You may have the pointer. Yes, Commissioner Arias.
In view of the discussion that we had earlier this meeting about setting up a subcommittee because of all the variables that are occurring in Plaza Nuevo, how do you intend to fold this in? Because this is a significant project that could affect the results of any subcommittee action.
I'm going to defer to staff on that.
My understanding was the discussion only had to do with storefronts.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so this was last reviewed, Phase 2 was last reviewed January 4th, 2012. Thank you. It received project design approval and continued indefinitely with the following comments. The profile of the proposed benches is acceptable. Removal of iron railings at the north court is appreciated. Call out the finish and workmanship of all materials. Provide drainage for the bench. The details of the column fountain will be very important. The proportions of the column height and width are appropriate according to Palladian calculations. Study the height of the pool surround, and lastly, continue to study the terminus of the benches so that they do not compete with the base of the fountain column. Mr. Lenny, Mr. Mills, thank you. I was going to call you Mr. Ryan.
That works too.
Well, we did that, and we have some more detailed in the drawings, demolition plan, things of this nature. So, but I think maybe we should just go ahead and respond to the to the comments. I'm sorry, it's A101. One of the we restudied the size of the pool, and we were very small. In fact, there was hardly any water there by the time you had the return of the pond. The other thing that was really troubling us, and we did not have a resolution at the last meeting, was how we were going to make this transition between the bench and the pool. And I think what we did is to basically cut the bench back and allow more landscaping, and then just put the landscaping, which we're proposing to have some boxwood hedges and iceberg roses. The rest of it, of course, it says tree to be removed, tree to be replaced, light to move, and so on and so forth. So everything stays pretty much the same as that. Just going on to the next page, let me see what we have here. It's just the, here we have the technical drawings and a reference photograph of the profile and the texture that we intend to finish the bench. And this is actually some sort of a slurry coat that's been there since the 1920s. And it's really effective, and we like it very much. The other issue, if you recall the drains, we did find these drains, and I'm sorry to go back to the previous page. I forgot to mention those. Are they here? Right? Oh, yeah. And we try to space them as far apart as we could. And the way they work is that they just collect the water and then the daylight into the pavement, which already has a slope away from that anyway. In terms of the actual monument, we kept the proportions that we had previously. We did work quite a bit on the actual transition, which was the critical portion of it. The sketch showed something, but that profile, that is what it is that we're proposing for the Capitol and the Astragal as well. And you can see the enlarged drawings here, and showing not only the proportions but the actual detailing of it.
And I might add the pool surround is what we studied as well. Some of the previous comments were consider it being bench height or usable in that sense, and the thickness. So we kind of massaged both so it could be used in that manner.
And we did raise it, and of course we had to have a return for the water, and that's when the water started shrinking and shrinking. And then if you notice also, we are insetting the tile so that it's flush with the stucco, so it's not proud of it. Let me see, and this is a detail of the scupper. The Angel itself, which the Nikki I should call it, not the Angel. The Nikki is being worked on, and we are having some people look at that and to see if we can go ahead and it's feasible to do it out of bronze or copper or some of the other composite materials, and we'll come back to report how we're coming along. We would love to see a small scale model of it, and so but we are currently working on that. The terracotta would be the column and the base would be solid terracotta, and we're looking at various companies that will provide us with that. Also, I might add on the terracotta, make sure that it's not glazed terracotta. It's porous. It has to be durable enough, number one, to last and to make sure it doesn't fall apart. Shall we get comments on this?
What's the pleasure of the commission? Full package of drawings? Okay.
This is far simpler. We did eliminate the wrought iron. We are proposing the benches that you approved. We are redoing the signage for the wave signs.
The wayfinding there.
Wayfinding sign. There was another issue with how you terminate the wall, and then of course we have the sign that we have. We had a difficult situation by code that you're only supposed to have a 4-inch opening between pickets. In this case, it's not a picket, but because of the escalator, we were trying to keep this 3.5-inch space because we couldn't butt it right against it, clearly. And then we really were struggling how to deal with this corner because it just didn't look right. And so what we're proposing is doing a large sphere out of steel with eyes and mouth and legs and
no arms.
No arms.
With a face?
Yes.
So that would make it. Okay, never mind.
What? Just one.
No, there's one on each side.
One on each side of the
escalator and stair.
Of the escalator, and that would be the terminus of the wall that meets the escalator.
Okay. Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask a question real quick then. This new information kiosk, what does that look like?
It's the existing kiosk here being relocated. There's
Then
light existing
indicate
light.
as such, relocated. Okay. All right. Questions, Commissioner Schallenberger? You want to skip you for now? Oh.
Yeah.
I'm opening public comment then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. DeForest.
Yes. I just am bothered by how this monumental column with a statue on top of it fits the EPV guidelines. I have not been terribly well traveled in Spain, and I know they have lots of columns in Italy, but we're not doing Italian. We're trying to do a Andalusian Spanish style, and I don't. It just doesn't fit. The little the Moorish style tended to have small surface fountains, small surface, or not so small in the Alhambra, but still a surface fountain but not with one of these monumental columns. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. DeForest. Seeing no other public, I will close public comment and questions from commissioners.
Can you locate and plan where these figurines are?
Yes.
Right
Where the new
here.
wall terminates in
Here.
These little round figurines?
Yes. Yes, that's true.
Thank you.
Sun.
Okay, Commissioner Winnick, questions?
Staying with the figurines, I just wanted to understand, I didn't understand the code. They were there for a code reason? I just didn't get it.
Not the figurines. It's the termination of our new parapet wall, which is at 42 inches, running into the existing escalator, which is at 36 inches. So the transition between the two.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
Sure.
Okay. Commissioner Rios, any questions?
No, I'm a little bit.
Are you question? Okay.
I'll make comments.
All right, Commissioner Lavoie.
No question.
Commissioner Suding, yes. Have you looked very carefully at the proportions of this molding at the top and really kind of, I mean, that's 20 feet up in the air, and it only comes out maybe about 3 inches from the column. Do you think that's going to be substantial enough?
Yes.
Okay. And then explain to me why the surround cantilevers over the water so much.
Well, wanted to make sure as the water is dripping and splashing that it won't jump over the pool and create mold. And remember the terracotta spores that we're using.
And then last question is, how do you treat, or how are you treating the outfall of the bench drains?
We are just simply creating, lack of a better word, a hole.
You're not going to put a grate or anything on it? Okay. All right. Commissioner Sharp, any questions?
You call out the pool interior being a dark finish. Waterproofing a dark finish. What would be a dark finish?
I don't know, Don. I think we're looking at the pool manufacturers. There is I forget what it's called. There's a very thick epoxy that you can actually have in various colors, and so the idea is to create the seal, and that's why also this slip is here to be able to bring that epoxy on top of it.
Second question is really a question that I have never found any definitive answer. Is there a depth of a pool in a public area without having any fencing around it that is mandated by the health department or the building department, and how would that affect? I know that's more of a statement.
It has to be less than 18 inches of standing water in order to not require an enclosed fence.
All right. So all I know.
And I'm 99.9% sure of my answer on that one. Commissioner Boucher, questions?
This is a question.
Okay. Because we're in questions.
I noticed that you have these light fixtures, which I thought were being removed in other areas, but they're the same as the ones that are there now. You're not going to change them?
Not at this point. We're just relocating them. using the existing.
I hate those light fixtures. I voted no when they came
I
in
remember
40
that.
years
That's a
ago.
comment now.
Okay? Sorry.
Commissioner Drury, any questions?
Yes, could you tell me how much higher the pool surround is than it was last time? Did you
It
rate?
was, I believe it was either 12 or 14 inches
it was
prior.
14.
Now it's 18 inches. It looks a little more in keeping with the
Yes.
mass of the column. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments then, Commissioner?
It looks a little more in keeping with the height of the column.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a question, Commissioner Winnick?
I do, I'm sorry.
And
No.
No, I'm sorry, you finished.
I thought you were finished. I'm sorry.
No, and also I think that those figurines are extremely quirky. Those two little, and how big are they?
That's a question.
That's a question.
Well, they're supposed to be
Then I suggest that they be well fixed because they will be gone if they're
Oh,
not
yeah.
well put in place.
I thought they were going to be like that.
Okay, so your questions have been answered. Your comment was
Have
the
been made.
height of the fountain surround is more appropriate.
Appropriate, and yes.
Okay, Commissioner Winnick, did you have a question? you
I
wanted to-
did, and I think it may have been discussed and I spaced. On the pool, I heard you talking about the epoxy, and so my question is what is the color that's? Oh, it's just black.
It'll, as you know, in a black pool, you put it black and it reads aquamarine or green.
I
So that's-
understand, but you're going for a dark.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I'll follow up with a question. Have you considered using a tile in there? Small mosaic, not mosaic, but small square tiles in there as the bottom. You know that pools have been tiled, the pool bottoms have been tiled, and that sort of thing. Have you considered that?
We did talk about it, and we thought, we should keep it very simple, but then the next challenge will, how are we going to do this? And the epoxy came out as one single surface, and the whole idea of the special effect is to create a reflectance.
Yes, yes. Okay. Yes, Commissioner Schomburg.
Is there lighting inside of the fountain?
Is there?
Currently, no.
No, currently no.
Is there proposed?
No, no lighting in the fountain. There's no lighting in the fountain.
Yeah. Okay, Commissioner.
Is it, well, on that note, is there any lighting proposed to light, say, the top of the fountain? What are you calling the angel? Are you proposing to spotlight?
The Nike? No, and we may change our minds about that once we really start looking technically to see how complicated that would be.
Okay.
But for the moment, we're not proposing any lighting.
Okay.
There's quite a bit of ambient light in that space
Yeah.
in the evening.
Yeah, and there's like poles
All the storefronts, everything glows. We went out there.
Okay. Commissioner Boucher, any comments?
Yes, on the light fixtures. You probably know I've been on about this commission for a while.
As long as I've been alive.
Yes, that's what you've been. I came to your
Yeah.
listen.
Is your microphone on?
No, it's not. Everybody missed that. These lights, I voted no on them when they first came in. I've always found them very untraditional. And they make quite a statement in Paseo Nuevo, and I'd love to see a more traditional light fixture. That's just speaking for myself.
Commissioner Sharp, any comments?
Only that initially management heard that we're talking about trying to get a handle on the design of the storefronts primarily in Paseo Nuevo, and I brought up in the beginning of the meeting that this plethora of designs come before me at consent, and I have little or no guidelines as to how to approve a mishmash of stuff that varies from storefront to storefront, obviously, but also from tenant to tenant. And so there are a set of guidelines for Paseo Nuevo that we're going to, through a 4-person subcommittee, revisit and meet with you and try and firm those up so that applicants have a much better description of what we're looking for and don't come up with stuff that takes 2 or 3 meetings to resolve. But other than that, I have no comment.
Okay. Commissioner LaVoy?
Yes.
I'm sorry, sir. Sorry. Sorry. I appreciate it, but can't do that.
I think it'd be far more traditional to take the edge of the pool down straight, and doing a dark epoxy pool is like so yesterday that it's inappropriate in the district. It should be tile, a ceramic tile. Henry, I'm often amused by what you come up with and delighted by most of it, but those little heads, no. Please, no.
We'll come up with something else.
Something simpler, please. That's all.
Okay, Commissioner Arias, comments? Differ?
Yep. I agree totally with those heads.
What do you mean?
Absolutely no. They look like trolls from Norway. It's one thing to try and get some whimsy into your design, but that doesn't work. I would recommend a conversation with the city attorney about the depth of the pool, because even though you have rules and regulations that says, oh, you can have 18 inches, it's considered what is called an attractive nuisance. And if anybody drowns in it, there's going to be a lawsuit. And the city will be sued, and the owner will be sued, and everybody else. So I would have some conversation with the city attorney about what is the appropriate depth, because you may be asking for trouble. The other thing, I was in Spain not too long ago, in Portugal, and I've been to Spain many, many times, and I know there are columns there and things like this. But when I look at something like this, Aniki is Greek. It's a Greek goddess.
But that's where the angels came from.
I know, but it's a Greek goddess. And the other thing is, when I look at columns like this, I also think earthquake country, people walking by, things like this. And I would strongly urge you to consider very carefully the stability and strength of this column if you're going to build it, because we are in earthquake country, and again, there's a liability and all. But the statue, I have some real doubts about. You could put the Spanish bull up there.
Commissioner Winnick?
Overall, I like the project. I can support it. I would like to just comment on the column. I also heard, I think, in the presentation, maybe this is a question, that the sculpture itself is being looked at by some outside people. Maybe it's an artist. So I actually wanted to ask a question and then just comment. So, Mr. Lenny, what is the status in terms of the development of the sculpture?
We are talking to several people in this regard and just trying to feel the qualifications.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. I support the idea that as a public art piece, that it's an artist in it, or artist is involved in that. Thank you.
Commissioner Schellenberger?
I don't have any new comments other than I can support the project. Generally speaking, I think the column is studied, thought out, and appropriate. The proportions are what they need to be. I'll just defer to the other commissioners on the previous comments. As far as the sculpture itself, I don't have any concerns over sort of religious connotations. I mean, I off the top of my head, I could call it Christian, Mormon, and Greek. So, it's kind of a very subjective item there, and I think everybody's going to come up with their own conclusion there, which is fine. So I don't have anything else to say.
Okay.
It's fine.
Anyone else have any comments?
Mr. Chair, just one thought occurred to me. I should have said this in my comments, but I agree with Commissioner Lavoie about the, and I think with Commissioner Suding yourself about the tile. I think that the interior of the pool should be tile, and I would recommend a dark turquoise to go against that terracotta value.
Okay. All right, then I'll summarize the comments and look for somebody to make a motion. The height of the proposed fountain surround is more appropriate than what was presented previously. At least one commissioner felt that more traditional lighting should be proposed.
Mr. Chair, would that be, can you specify which lighting you're talking about? Is it all lighting?
The pole lighting.
Thank you.
Okay. Eliminate the cantilever on the fountain surround. The fountain bottom and side should be a dark tile. Eliminate the trolls. Eliminate the trolls.
Is that what he calls
That's
them?
what I know.
Why don't you specify where those are?
At the top of the escalator.
He doesn't.
You have to find them all.
Decorative figurative sculpture.
Eliminate the figurative sculpture at the top of the escalators.
I don't even know what to call it.
Okay.
Decorative figurine.
All right. Investigate the appropriate depth of the fountain pool. Investigate the appropriate depth of the fountain pool.
Legally appropriate depth.
The column sculpture / statue is more Greek than Spanish.
You're just making a statement that it's more Greek than Spanish?
Yeah. It's a comment. It's a statement.
So,
Okay. Well, if
the
let me get
commission
through let me get
supports-
through them,
Okay.
and then if the commissioner that makes the motion doesn't want that comment, then that's fine. I'm not saying that these are comments that have to be accepted. The stability of the column should be considered. Consider public art input, and the proportions of the columns are appropriate. Yes, are acceptable. The proportions of the column are acceptable. Commissioner Schellenberger.
Just one thing on the figurine. It's kind of a fun topic. I'd just like to thank the applicant for trying something new. I mean,
no.
it would have been so easy for you just to do a plaster terminus there, the same old thing that we're unimaginative. In fact, you could have come up with something unimaginative that would have been accepted. And that's sort of a sad statement in its own, but thanks for trying.
Yeah. I agree. I actually find them whimsical. They're and that kind of whimsy in an urban environment is important. However, they are a bit scary. They have no arms. Okay,
Mr.
so
Chair,
let's get through our motion, and then we'll go for some discussion.
I'll make a motion for, where are we, final? For final approval with the following modifications to the chair's comments. That the decorative figurines be more Spanish inspired, or that the architect provide us with a picture of what inspired him to take that track.
So you can eliminate the comment about eliminating the trolls.
Yes, please. And the other is the figurine proposed for the top of the column have an Hispanic inspiration.
Okay, so maybe add to the comment that the column sculpture statue is more Greek than Spanish. The column shall have the statue shall have a more Spanish
Hispanic
influence.
inspiration.
Hispanic inspiration.
We could stick King Carlos on top.
Okay. So we had a motion by Lavoie.
I have a question.
Just one. Can I finish? Motion by
Yep.
Lavoie.
Second.
Second by Boucher. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Under discussion.
Can we return to the consent calendar? Yes.
Yeah. Under discussion, Ms. Gantz, did you have
Okay,
something?
so it was final approval of the project and continued, what, 2 weeks to consent for details?
Don't ask me, he's the maker of the motion.
For any changes or
okay.
additional information.
So 2 weeks or indefinite?
2 weeks.
Yes. 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
But just to clarify, we do have final approval of this? Okay, great.
Okay, Commissioner Schallenberg, was it? No? I'm sorry.
No.
No? Okay.
And 2
All right,
weeks,
there you have
I'm
it.
still confused. And 2 weeks to consent for what?
Final,
For any additional detailing and for the...
For details then.
For details.
And then the other question I had was the decorative figurine
On the column.
on the
should
column.
Have a more,
Okay.
shall have a more
Right,
Hispanic
I
expression.
understand that, but then we,
Decorative figurines.
A statue. So wait a second.
okay, what we're calling
I'm
decorative
confusing
figurines.
that with the trolls.
Yeah.
The trolls.
So
Both.
you said eliminate the trolls comment.
No, I didn't say eliminate them, that they both should.
No, eliminate
He
the
did.
comment. Eliminate the comment.
Eliminate the comment about the trolls.
All sculptures, Spanish.
There you go. How about that?
All sculptures.
All sculptures shall have a Hispanic influence. Does that work with Mr. Lavoy?
That works
Does that
fine.
work with the seconder? Yes. Okay. Great.
Putting a Mexican hat?
That's not
No. You know better than that.
Oh, I see.
there you go. You may take that one.
you very much.
The meeting is adjourned.